Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed lunch at the studio. Very excited for this next session, which I'm assuming most of you are actually here for the entire day, but this is going to be a fun one, a fireside chat. Pardon me. I would like to introduce here in a minute, we're going to read some quick bios, obviously starting with Dr. Panchanathan, aka Panch. He told me to say it once, and then we're moving to Panch moving forward, is a computer scientist and engineer, leader in the fields of science, engineering, and education, with more than 3 decades of experience in higher education and government. Through his career, he has designed and built knowledge enterprises aimed at advancing research innovation, strategic partnerships, entrepreneurship, global development, and economic growth, and most famously known, appointed the 15th director of the U.S. National Science Foundation, a $9 billion independent federal agency, and the only government agency charged with advancing all fields of scientific discovery, technology innovation, and STEM education. Joining him, Oleg Hakin is the president and CEO of Viavi Solutions, Inc. He is one of the newest board members on the Partnership for Economic Innovation Board of Directors. Please put your hands together for Oleg and Panch.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. And hopefully we have some interesting discussion here. And, you know, maybe I'll start and present Panch with some good questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Good,
so, of course, we all watch TV, all the news. The hottest thing everybody's talking about, we need to reclaim the innovation, the technology leadership. We need to be competitive. We need to be, really reclaim our, rightful leadership in the world. So it's a lot of platitudes that politicians like to throw, but I think let's get down to substance and let's think about, when you think about competitiveness and when you think about innovation, can we drill down one level? Is like, what is, let's be more prescriptive. What does it actually mean?
Okay. Before I get there, I think this is an innovation meeting, so I thought that we should start with the two of us.
Okay.
We have done something which is innovative. So my name is Panch, and I can show you what my name is. His name is Oleg. He can show you what his name is. Okay. So I want every one of you to think about your name and see how you can show it. And let me see how innovative each one of you are and work on it. So let's start with that. So, it's a very good question. So here's what I will tell you. You are right that this term competitiveness is such a broad term. What does it really mean? What does it really translate to? And who are we competing? I think it all starts with us. And I take it competitiveness starts with every one of us, which is, are we better today than we were yesterday in terms of what we are doing for not only us, our family, but for our state, our region, our country, and so on. So it starts with us. Having said that, I find that as a nation, in the last 5-6 decades, when I have at least watched this trajectory, right, or even more, one of the amazing things about the United States, which I take a lot of pride in, and I talk about this a lot, is this free spirit, which then makes us highly innovative and entrepreneurial thinkers. Okay? But unfortunately, I find that it is not as proliferate as we would like to see it. What do I mean by that? Since joining NSF, taking over NSF, I've made this statement that we have done an amazing job in terms of inspiring, motivating, nurturing talent in certain parts of our country, in certain sectors of the country, certain demographic of our country, and so on. Okay? So I call it domestic talent. So we've done a reasonable job with domestic talent, but we have not done a good enough job, okay? And what we have done is that we have substituted the lack of that domestic talent being expressed in full form by bringing in talent from across the globe. And you and I are examples of that, sure. Okay? And I call it substitutive kind of an approach, right? What do I mean by that? Is that we have not taken full advantage of the domestic talent. And because of the fact that we are able to aggregate global talent, we have been able to still keep in the vanguard of innovation, okay? But I believe that this moment challenges us to unleash every ounce of domestic talent across the geographies of our country, rural or urban, across the broad socioeconomic demographic, across the rich diversity of our country, and then, on top of that, welcome, inspire, motivate, nurture, and retain global talent as much as you can. The additive part of both domestic talent and global talent is needed a lot more now than ever before. One alone will not do, or part of one with another will not do. We need the full force and full scale of the domestic talent and the global talent together to outcompete by out-innovating any nation on earth. So to me, competitiveness is about ideas and talent and the expression of them in its fullest form. And I think we should start right there. How can we be a hyper-competitive nation? We can be if we take all of our talent and bring all of the talent together and allow that opportunity to express itself. Why, as I said earlier, here with the free spirit and the democracy and the innovative mindsets that we have here, many countries, when I talk to science ministers when they used to visit me or when I visited them or other leaders, they all would want to see how they can replicate what we have done here, whether it is NSF or other things that we have done in Silicon Valley and so on. I think we have really something going, that fundamental core spirit, but that needs to be completely enveloped with this talent. So that's what I think it is when you start to drill it down from the level of what we call competitiveness to what it really means. We can discuss all the other details in terms of technology and so on. I'm sure we'll have a chance to do that. But to me, that is the key. Mm-hmm. That is the key.
Very good. Well, I mean, so when we think about the talent, so clearly, it's always better if you're, when we think about innovation, to be innovative in the areas that are going to be big in the next decade, next 2 decades. What do you see are as the areas we as a country must win in order for us to retain our place in the world as the leading industrial, innovative, technological power? And more specifically, what are the elements that we may be lacking today where we need to put more focus on in order to get ourselves in a position where we truly can bring the talent and promote this talent to drive the innovation?
Oh, no, that's again a very, very good question, Oleg. I mean, it's very interesting that you're an excellent exemplar yourself in terms of all the great things that you have accomplished and how you turned around companies which were not necessarily successful to widely successful companies. We need clearly more of that, but let's talk about technologies. I mean, it will not be a surprise for you. Clearly, there's a lot of talk about AI. My own research area is AI for the last 35 years. I can tell you there is some reality to it, but there's a lot of also some hype to it. So we need to do a lot more work in terms of making AI real, okay? And clearly that's an area that I think merits a lot of investment and as well as focused attention. But then there are a whole host of technology areas. I mean, when you look at where quantum is heading, and quantum and AI, I think it's a huge opportunity for us to be in the vanguard, okay? And we have set some of the sort of the fundamental research and the base things that we have done here in the United States. I don't think we should lose out in terms of not capitalizing on that. I fear that we are not, taking full advantage of all the fantastic discoveries that have come about here. Let me give you a quick example on that. What do I mean by that? At NSF, for example, we have been responsible so far for 270 plus Nobel laureates. There is no agency in the United States or any agency in any part of the world that is anywhere near that kind of expression of discovery talent. These are people that NSF invests in early in their career, okay? So when you have that kind of unbelievable discovery potential, whether it is physics, chemistry, math, biology, medicine, economics, whatever that is, that, in math, of course, it's a Nobel Prize, right? It's called Fields Medal. You find that it's unbelievable discovery potential, but I'm not so sure that we are taking every one of the discovery potential and translating them at speed, at scale, all across our country. So there is a lot of work to be done in that regard. So now let's talk about technology. So therefore we started with AI, we said quantum, biotech, synthetic biology, clearly the next generation of communication, wireless, next G, and it will continue to advance, 6G and beyond, okay? Clearly the advanced manufacturing. I find materials is an area that's going to be a platform technology that's going to have to evolve in very significant ways. Clearly, semiconductor is something that is always got to be in the mix here. but there are a lot of technologies and emerging technologies. I often say to people that I'm able to tell those labels that you can relate to. But what we all don't relate to is things that don't have labels yet. What NSF is funding right now are I remind people that we have funded AI for over 6 decades. It's got many different forms of evolution of AI. We even funded AI when we called so-called AI winters. When people walked away from AI with skepticism, we kept funding more of it, right? So that's the kind of thing that we do in the United States with funding agencies like NSF, NIH, DARPA, you name it, NIST, NOAA, NASA and others. So that kind of a mindset of investing and hyper-investing on those technologies or ideas that don't yet even have labels. These labels are going to show up a decade or 2 or even 4 decades from now. That work is happening right now. So for me, therefore, to say that these are the technologies that would be too short-sighted. It only will satisfy your appetite in terms of saying, well, I already know that. This guy didn't say anything new to me, okay? Yes, that would be true, because those are labels that you can understand and appreciate and relate to. But there are tons and tons of those kinds of discovery work that is in the hopper right now across the various research labs, the national labs, the amazing universities across the United States, all sizes and all types of universities. It's just mind-boggling to see that. Okay, I'm a computer scientist, so and I'm also a professor. So every answer will be at least 50 minutes lecture sizes.
No, that's okay. That's fine. It's very exciting.
So you got to get used to that, man.
Of course. So I'm looking for a pause so I can jump in with the next question.
Yeah. So why don't I let you ask the next question? Whatever I have to say, I will put it in the answer of that question.
Very good. Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, what you brought up, clearly governments do play a big role in it. I mean, you travel around the world, I've traveled around the world. 40 years ago, you would go pretty much everywhere. US was so far ahead of everything else, right? But everybody has come up quite a bit. Yeah. And a lot of it was driven by very smart, government, industrial policy, and investment in innovation that, TSMC, Taiwan 40 years ago was nothing. Yeah. Today, it's the powerhouse in semiconductor devices, as well as all the other innovation that comes when you're at the bleeding edge of semiconductor physics. So clearly, I mean, there's good examples where the government can inject or enable something, and then you have a huge success grows up. I mean, we see it in Silicon Valley. And there's many failures. I mean, we've seen Malaysia try it, we've seen Indonesia, many other countries try it, and they could never quite get that a super critical mass to spark the innovation spark. What do you think things work on? What do you think the government, drive of innovation does not work? Yeah. I mean, if you look at through your experience, what have been the successes? What have been the failures?
Yeah, clearly government cannot control innovation. Innovation has to be led to, be inspired and happen everywhere. What government can do, however, is help seed, shape up to a point. And let me give you a concrete example. Mm-hmm. So when I went to NSF 5 years ago, I said, I'm going to have to do certain things at NSF, which is going to change the trajectory a little bit, okay? And one of that was, I felt that innovation should be everywhere across our nation, not just limited to the great Silicon Valley, Kendall Square, or Austin, and a few places across our country. It's got to be everywhere, okay? So I launched a new directorate called the Directorate of Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, called the TIP Directorate, just to tip the balance in our favor, okay? So this directorate, among the many things that we did in the directorate, not only I made sure that we launched it within a year or less, but more importantly, launched the programs. And I'm going to talk about one program, okay? And that will sort of address this. That program is called the Regional Innovation Engine Program. I said every region, every local area has got unbelievable in-place, in-context innovation ideas. And for us not to take advantage of that and create the unbelievable ecosystems of that expression of that innovation idea or idea is a missed opportunity. And to focus all our attention, as important as Silicon Valley is and Kendall Square is, and we need to do more there too, we need to take advantage of every one of that. So I said that this regional innovation competition is going to be very simple. It's going to be no more than one sheet of paper where people are going to tell me what the idea is, who the partners are, and in 6 weeks we have to make a decision of how we're going to move forward. not 25-page proposals taking years or months to process them. Okay, simple. And we got 670 concept papers, one-pagers. And we did something very unique in NSF. We just published everything online, so that everybody can see what the other is doing, so they'll start to partner with people who are thinking alike. And we got a couple of hundred proposals, and we quickly invested in 45 to 50 of them. Now it's about 75, 80 of them across the country. Every state, every territory of our nation was represented in this. Not because we wanted to democratize by just making sure they got one, but because their ideas were stupendous that they got invested in, which tells you the proof point that ideas can be everywhere. Let me give you one example of that, okay? In Reno, Nevada, the topic that came about was lithium mining. I didn't realize that Nevada has got the largest lithium mine in the country. And they said, how might we build that sort of a circular economy of being able to extract, mine, process, full life cycle recycling of lithium. And it happens right here. Not that we mine here and send it somewhere overseas and then have national security issues because of that. Do it right at home, create the jobs right in Nevada. And the University of Nevada, Reno has a center which does this in terms of understanding the fundamentals of how to process these materials and mining in a green way, okay? And then the governor's office, the economic development ecosystem, the community college said we will train the skilled technical workforce for this mining industry. Came together. Of course, Tesla's gigafactory is there. So how the community came together to take one idea that they felt that they can be best at was truly inspirational. And you will find that, and please go check the NSF regional innovation engines, you will see the unbelievable expression of this. So the point that I'm trying to bring here is that innovation is everywhere. It is our responsibility to unleash the innovation everywhere and anywhere in our country, so that it might then provide prosperity for every region of our country, jobs, good quality of life, careers for people. That's how we make our country continuously in the vanguard and great, and that every ounce of talent is fully recognized and honored and realized. So that's a simple example of how we did this. We did the same thing with AI institutes. And you told me I cannot talk longer than 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So I'm going to curtail myself, and you can ask the next question.
All right. Well, that's great. So, I mean, so clearly we talked about, we all know there's a Silicon Valley, there is the East Coast, and of course there's all the country in between. Yeah. And a great example on Nevada. So, I mean, in corporate world, many ways we call it centers of excellence. You have locations all over the world, and you say, okay, you're going to focus on this, you focus on this. And I think there's, to some extent, similar type things. We have different universities around the country are more or less becoming centers of excellence for various disciplines. Let's bring it closer to home in Arizona. Yeah. What do you see Arizona as the natural center of innovation and opportunities for us to take our kind of leadership spot, not only in the United States, but globally?
Yeah. Oh, that's a very, if you look at, I was just in SkySong just 2 days ago, as they're thinking about their future. I mean, when SkySong started in 2008, 2009, learning technologies was that focus area. And I would arguably say that some of the really top-notch ideas of learning technologies came out of there. There's a lot more to be done. And oftentimes what we do is we would seed this in Arizona, and then somebody else will take it away. We got to make sure that we build that economic development ecosystems around those ideas that we incubate here. So learning technologies, a lot of opportunity there in the AI. And the fact that we have, I'm going to take my home university, Arizona State University, 80,000 students on campus, 100,000 students online. What better live-in laboratory can you ask for if you want to test out all your ideas in terms of AI and learning and advanced, augmented learning. So I think that's one of those areas. Semiconductor has always been a strength of Arizona, and because we see that now being expressed in various forms. The only thing I would say is that it should not just become only a fabrication center, as important as they are, but that we also capture all the design, the building, the architecture. We talked about the architecture a little while earlier, design, architecture, as well as the fantastic implementations with the fabrication. So we build the ecosystem which is tightly structured. There are a lot of opportunities there in my view. And the expression of that in terms of newer vistas of applications, why would not Arizona be the place where climate technologies are built? Where else would you build it? Okay? technologies for the future of water, climate, quality of air, all those problems that we face, those climate technologies should be right here. Call them whatever you want to do, energy technologies, climate technologies. It's got to be right here. So there you go. Biotech, okay? Yes, people are doing a lot of biotech everywhere, but if you have the AI capacity here, can we express this in the form of, the Mayo Clinic is here, the number of medical schools that have been launched right now here. The population, some segments of population, in this case geriatric is being one of them, right? There are some unique facets of what we have here in Arizona, and we can take advantage of that in terms of developing technologies in areas that I think is meaningful to this place. So we are not saying, standard biotech, it's not that. It's about very specific to what we think that we are good at, and we can be the place that happens. Healthy aging, and the technologies that surround healthy aging is an area that is getting a lot of attention. So I can go on and on, but the point that I'm trying to make is that there is enough opportunity here because we have got amazing universities at ASU, University of Arizona, Northern Arizona universities, and of course, talent generation in Grand Canyon and others, and the largest community college system, Maricopa Community Colleges. We've got the necessary elements of what we need in terms of talent generation and idea generation. And when I look at the amazing things that's happening at the Global Futures Laboratory at ASU or Biodesign Institute, you name it, there's so much that can be translated into the industries of the future and the entrepreneurial ventures of the future. So I know I've given you a laundry list still, but if you were to focus on a few of these with specific subtopical areas that is most appropriate for Arizona, I think we will do exceedingly well here. And I'm really amazed by, having interacted with some of the mayors and city councils and of course GPEC and PEI and others, I can tell you the collective enthusiasm here is unique. Yes, there is competition, but there is also the feeling that this is Arizona. And there's people really wanting to get things here. That's, I think, something that we should take a lot of pride and see how we can bring a lot of that doesn't happen in every part of our country, and some of them do want it, like what we have here. We have something really very, very exciting going on here. And having been away for 5 years, I can tell you, I watched it with so much admiration and pride. And I think this is a moment to leap forward, okay? To speed up, to scale up, and to focus.
Very good, thank you. Clearly, ecosystems have a wonderful way of driving and then, get the innovation going, kind of create the critical mass where it takes a life of itself.
Yeah.
So, clearly during your tenure in SF, clearly today, AI is already here. A lot of corporations are doing the development, biotech, a lot of the university research as well as private research. Let's think about a little bit further ahead. So what is the next kind of moonshot or the next big thing? So 10 years ago, maybe only some esoteric people in the country heard AI or machine learning. Today it's everywhere. So what do you see 10 years from now? What we should be thinking ahead, and where do we want to start putting seeds to create the new ecosystem within Arizona, let's say?
No, I think, AI, to me, AI is a platform technology. It's going to be in everything. So you want the platform technologies to be successful. We talked about materials earlier, semiconductor, whatever it is, all of these are, to me, platform. Think of them as horizontals, okay? Now you stack verticals on top of them, and there are many different thematic areas. Energy, clearly, there's a lot of place to go with energy. Because we talk about AI, and you look at the consumption of the AI processors, NVIDIA and AMD and others, you see that this consumption cannot be kept pace with unless we find newer forms of energy sources. And therefore, there's a lot of focus right now on SMRs, the small modular reactors. That's, and of course, we still are, exploring away with some of the renewable possibilities and so on. So energy is going to continue to be a significant focus area. And I would submit that, again, Arizona has got a tremendous opportunity to play. Okay? But when you talk about moonshot, I really am excited about what synthetic biology and because I find that we are biological specimens, right? We are. And therefore, we have still not understood who we are. I don't mean philosophically, but I mean biologically, right? And how things work. We are just starting to get to understand that. There's a lot of potential here. At the end of the day, if you're talking about good quality living and healthy living and, and all of that, I think there's tremendous opportunity in the synthetic biology space, systems biology, synthetic biology space. So to me, they are amazing focus areas for the future. And of course, AI, I was giving a talk to the academies a few months ago. People think about how biology can be enhanced, enriched, empowered by AI. I told them the reverse is also true. AI is going to be empowered and enriched by biology because of the fact that without understanding how the brain functions, how are you going to actually get an understanding of what AI should be as we think about the future of the evolution of AI itself, and how AI and humans work together. If it's a co-evolution of AI and humans, you need to understand the biological principles of how we operate as humans. And by biology, I don't mean just the biology of the science. I mean social, behavioral, humanities, all of that being part of that. I will take a moment to draw attention to this one because this is very, very important. I think in technology and science, what we have done, unfortunately, is we have put so much focus on that we have lost track of what ultimately it is for, which is it is for humans. And so the fact that we have not embraced humanities, arts, social sciences, social behavioral sciences, and more in the early stage of the evolution of technology is why we are today with all the challenges that people talk about AI, whether it's ethics or bias or privacy or security, you name it. And I therefore feel strongly, very strongly in fact, that, and we did this in NSF, one of the configurations, that we wanted more, and I'm very proud of NSF. It said that they do a lot of work with social behavioral economic sciences and the various science and engineering directorates. We need that right at the inception of ideas and technological breakthroughs, that bringing together of all the disciplines. And that's how we are going to make real advances, and with safe, secure, and meaningful technologies that is useful for humanity and empowers humanity. So that's something that I think is very, very important as we think about the future.
Very good. Well, I would like to thank Dr. Punch for his great wisdom and sharing his perspective, and wish him continue to evangelize innovation within Arizona.
Thank you, Oleg.
Thank you.
Awesome talking to you.
Thank you both. Oleg, you
Thank
can
you.
stay right there because you're stuck. Panch, sayonara, my friend.
They can't take me anymore.
Thank you both for your infinite wisdom and knowledge. We're just going to set up some chairs here, and we'll get started in about 10 seconds. Wes doing manual labor.
It's rare.
All right. Okay.
Okay, well, that conversation tees up nicely into the next conversation. We will be discussing chips and AI. I hear those are two very important fields from what I hear, as you guys just teed that up. And so with that, I would like to invite Stephen Gray, Senior Vice President of New Product Development on SEMI and board member of PEI, for the panel moderator, and he will introduce the panelists.
Okay.
Panelists, come on up. He will be introducing you, I'm sorry, so come on up and have a seat. Okay, Mr. Gray, the floor is yours.
See, grab another microphone from there.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for attending the panel. I think I would rather have each of my esteemed panelists introduce themselves. Actually, they would do justice to that better than myself. Although I will say that we carefully selected the panel to encompass all aspects of the semiconductor industry. Many people think about semiconductors, and of course, in the greater Phoenix area, TSMC has built a very large facility, so they think more from a manufacturing perspective. But broadly speaking, there's three major facets of semiconductor as part of the industry. Part of it is design, which is my background. I've been involved in the design of semiconductors over 4 decades. Then there's the manufacturing of those semiconductors. And then finally, there's the test of those semiconductors, which expands not only the assembly and test of the semiconductors themselves, but also the test systems in the field, which are used for monitoring and testing their capabilities. So with that, I think I'd like to turn things over first to Oleg to introduce himself.
Thank you. My name is Oleg Heiken. I've been into Arizona now. This is my second rotation in Arizona. I started my career as probably many people at what used to be called Motorola, but it was in Schaumburg. I designed telecommunication systems. Then I spent 8 years with a company called Boston Consulting, living 4 years in Europe and in the US. And then after a while, I said, I really want to go back to the high tech. So I moved to California, and there was a company called Conexon that came out of Rockwell that became Skyworks, became Jazz Semiconductor, a lot of things. I ran strategy and business development, and after 4 years, I came to Arizona to Amcor Technology, which is a semiconductor packaging and test. I ran Amcor for about 5 years. During the time, we got into from traditional kind of old school wire bond technologies into the advanced packaging, which is today all the rage with heterogeneous integration and things like that. And after that, so I ran contract manufacturer. After that, I ran a semiconductor company called International Rectifier, which, believe it or not, was the very first semiconductor company in the United States, is in Southern California. And that company was acquired by Infineon, which is a big German company, about 10 years ago. And after that, my next thing is I joined a company called Viavi Solutions, which used to be formerly known as JDS Uniface. So I've run manufacturing, contract manufacturing, semiconductor company, and now I'm running system and the software company. So had the opportunity to enjoy the entire value chain of technology.
Great. Gerald?
Hey,
Turn it on.
thank you, sir. Hey, everybody. My name is Gérald Miaille. So the slight accent is French. And something maybe fun about me is when people ask me something about me, I just say, hey, I'm French. My wife is from Zambia. We met in UK and we live in US. So now I'm going to explain how that happened. But basically, I'm like Steve. I was mostly in design. I started at Motorola in France. I moved to US in 2004, working for Motorola Freescale. Working in design, developing a lot of things, a lot of technology, power, audio, and radios. At some point, I decided to go work in UK. That's where I met Steve, actually. And that's also where I met my wife. And after a few years of working for a company called CSR, Cambridge Silicon Radio, and CSR was acquired by Qualcomm. And at that time, in 2014, I came back to US and worked with Steve for quite a few years. And at some point, I decided to go on what they call the dark side, I remember, where I moved company, went to work for Dialogue in the Valley, basically, to not only work on design, but develop my business knowledge. And that company got acquired too by Renesas. So I'm working for Renesas at the moment. And like I said, I went into the dark side where I took on a business division, and I'm working for the consumer and industrial power business division that I lead. So that's me.
Thank you. Manny?
Good afternoon, Manny Janakiram. In case you're wondering, what is this Honeywell guy sitting in a chips and AI panel? I've been with Intel before this for 25 years and Motorola, so it looks like all three of us have something in common. Motorola for a while, and I've kind of gone through the whole gamut of process engineering. Primarily, I was a lithography guy at one time, and then manufacturing. In fact, I ran the manufacturing fab, small fab at Motorola. At Intel, I was mainly involved with a lot of process control, yield, analytics. In fact, built the analytics and AI team from ground up, and supported the entire end-to-end supply chain. And after 25 years, I thought maybe I should do something different. And as well, in fact, history is I started with Allied Signal Aerospace, my first job here at US. So I thought, okay, let me go finish my career back in Honeywell. And I kind of I'm the VP for IT and supply chain at Honeywell. interestingly, I came to know that we also have a fabrication facility in Minnesota, so I'm going to go take a look at it as well.
Thanks, Manny. I was just thinking it's kind of humorous that all of us in some form or fashion are connected to Motorola because onsemi was a spin out of Motorola. I think it was like 21 or 22 years ago. So it's a large industry, but small in many respects. And in preparing for the panel, I was kind of reflecting on the history of the semiconductor industry, and we heard quite a few interesting things about the aerospace industry and the history of aircraft and how, Boeing and Gulfstream and these companies have to support aircraft that have been deployed for 50 years or more. And it was 65 years ago that Jack Kilby was attributed with inventing the integrated circuit at Texas Instruments. So that's really, you kind of say that's when things got started in semiconductors. Yes, there were semiconductors before that, but much more primitive. I started designing semiconductors in the early 90s. Actually, for the mobile phone industry, it was a revolutionary time. We were moving into the first digital cellular platforms based on GSM, then US-based CDMA. And how we were designing those phones, we're using many application-specific integrated circuits. So I was thinking, well, that's kind of like the first generation of semiconductors is you had all these ASICs, as we called them, and they were fit for purpose. You had a digital ASIC, an analog ASIC, et cetera. The next big revolution in semiconductors was really integration. We came up with CMOS technology, which allowed you to be able to take all these application-specific integrated circuits and put them into a single semiconductor. And that was really fueled the advancement of semiconductor technology. You may have heard something like Moore's Law, which was every 18 months you could shrink Gordon Moore, who was from Intel, said you could shrink the gate length of a transistor about every 18 months, which gave you area and power improvements. We are now at the point where I just saw on a slide earlier that the fab that TSMC built here in the greater Phoenix area is running 2 nanometer technology. Back when I was designing semiconductors, we were talking about 90 nanometer, 120 nanometer. So yeah, we've shrank the technology considerably since then. And I was thinking, well, what is the next big evolution in semiconductors? And it's really the chips and AI. And it's a relatively new phenomenon, I would say. I really started paying attention to AI in the design side of semiconductors probably only about 2 or 3 years ago. And how it is accelerated is pretty remarkable. But then I was also thinking, okay, well, manufacturing actually has been using AI much more than probably in the design side up to now. But if you think about the entire ecosystem of semiconductors, it's going to completely change how we do semiconductors. The integration changed the players. There were many semiconductors that went out of business, were acquired, assumed into others. I mean, when I was designing modems for Nokia back in the early 90s, there were probably, I think, 20 different companies that were designing cellular modems. Now, really, there's about 2. And that was how Qualcomm became so big in the industry, is they were able to capture that integration of all the functionality into what's called system on a chip. So if we think about AI and what AI can do in the semiconductor industry, I want to get my panelists' view on a few items. First one is really kind of more on the manufacturing space, and I'm really happy that between Oleg and Manny, you guys have really a lot of experience here. So how will AI change what we're doing in front-end and back-end manufacturing? I mean, we have factories where we do semiconductor manufacturing, and I visit them all over Malaysia and China and so forth. And, you put your little bunny suit on and you walk around and they show you all the machines. And there's just tremendous number of amount of manpower that's required to be able to run those fabs. And I was thinking, this may change considerably. So maybe I'll start with you, Manny. What's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. It's very interesting. The first thing I was told when I joined Motorola was I came from a manufacturing facility. Don't touch it, don't breathe on it, and then cover yourself completely, right? So, and then you cannot even see what you're doing, literally, right? But the question is the technology, if you really think of it, it comes from sand. We take sand, we build the entire chip from the sand. And the concept really is the humans make the sand to become the chip that we are all using. And that is the power of that. In terms of AI, it has evolved significantly. When you look at we have Industry 4.0, we use that as an analogy, right? The revolution of PC happened, almost like even though the semiconductor was invented in 1965, the PC and everything came into existence 20 years later. And then we went through that revolution. And then early 2000 was internet. And then, somewhere between 2000 and 2010, the cell phone really took off. And between 2010 and 2020, the robotics and the AI, but really the AI started into high gear after 2018, right? I mean, what we knew as AI ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, was very commonly used in the semiconductor in all the industries. Because when we start looking at the chips manufacturing, we at Intel, a 300 millimeter wafer will have thousands, in fact, 100,000 chips on it. Imagine if if there is a defect in it, we got to scrap the lot. That is in terms of millions of dollars. So having said that, don't breathe on it, don't touch it, everything is fully automated. We need to have a way of making sure that whatever we are designing and whatever we are manufacturing is going to give us almost 95% yield or more. How do we make sure we can make that happen? Number one, remove variability. Number two, automate everything. Number three, instill quality into what you do and make sure that you measure it and then you improve it as we go. And that is where the automation, the AI technology, they come together. What we called as the narrow AI, which was AI ML, was leveraged, whether it is an image analysis, looking for defects on the wafer, or automating the process, creating digital twins, or really looking at where's my yield, what can I predict? And then when you kind of move that into a supply chain, what do I need to make? Because when you start building facilities, you all know that it is now around $10 billion to build a big, large facility. And it takes anywhere between 2 to 4 years to build a facility, right? If you're going to make a wrong prediction on what the demand is going to look like, and I'm going to build based on this demand and the market change and the technology, good luck. Sometimes the things change over that time. So having that prediction capability, leveraging technology and AI is what we have done across the board. And now we are coming into what we call as general AI, which is primarily leveraging the Gen AI, and a lot of activities going on in terms of creating. All of you must be using AI on a daily basis, right? Either you're creating document, or you're summarizing things, or you're talking to, like an AI. And that is also used in the industry, whether it is for manufacturing, connecting and collecting all the data and making intelligence out of it. The maintenance that we know, looking at log files and everything has changed now. Everything is kind of integrated, so we know what equipment needs PM at what time, so that kind of gets done in that space. And we are moving into the next, we are in the agentic AI space, where we're creating all types of agents, similar to this function, a planner function, a buyer function, or a technician function. We're going to be creating agents, and then we're going to manage it through an agentic function so that the whole process, the factory, and the supporting supply chain should operate in a kind of an autonomous fashion. I believe that's where it is going, and I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah, I guess I thought I'd get your perspectives. Are we going to see humanoids in bunny suits, or?
Well, I don't think you need a humanoids in a bunny suits. I mean, reality today, I remember the original fabs. In fact, my previous company, we had a 6-inch fab, which was built in the late 80s in Temecula. And it did 22,000 wafers a week, 6-inch. And even there, I mean, initially when it started, it was all manual. Everything was moved around. By 2010, everything was robotic. And you just really, I mean, you did not really need, I would say, a technician moving things around. At that point, you had, and what you had originally going before AI, we had things called expert systems and statistical process control, right? But as volume of data starts going up and you start collecting metrology and everything in every little process, we got to the point where we were generating 1 terabit of data every 3-4 days from all the machines. So no human could actually analyze it. Even expert systems could not do it. So today when I look at AI, on one hand, you take all this data, there's no better way to, through inference, figure out exactly what's causing your yield loss or things like that. And the statistical process control gave way to machine learning, and it became a much faster iterative cycle, evolution. So then you think about it, okay, now I need much stronger silicon to really process all the data. As you process all the data, you need, you're able to do more. Now you need even stronger silicon. It goes back and forth, back and forth. And as I'm looking, from my perspective, where I'm today, we're providing test systems to design networks, design data centers, and things like that. I would look at the 2010, the whole world was running on 10 gigabit bus. Telecom networks were running 10 gig, and that was the state of the art. And chip to chip, you had PCI Express 2.0. You had the communications. 8 years later, we got 100 gig. So it took from 10 gig to 100 gig took 8 years to migrate. And we got PCI Express 3.0. 4 years later, 100 gig became 400 gig, and we needed PCI Express 3.0. Within 2.5 years, 400 gig became 800 gig. So now you get my drift. What took initially 8 years to go from one to another, now it's taking us 2 years to go to a whole new generation of technology. How do you keep up with it? I mean, you look at the processors that handle 10 gig versus something that, like you took at the Broadcom's Tomahawk latest switch, 50, 60 terabits of data. I mean, we're now, and of course, we're now approaching the limit where you are 2 nanometers. I used to design chips at 35 micron. Yeah. So I'm a bit older in that respect. But 2 nanometer, we're now approaching point where we're at an atomic level. Mm-hmm. So now becomes, okay, what comes next? And it's not going to be silicon. It needs to be something more. Thus, we are now seeing evolution of this whole fusion between silicon and optical, the silicon photonics, co-packaged optics and things like that, because every time we convert silicon to optics and optics to silicon, there's a lot of power loss. And one thing we cannot afford is more nuclear plant, have a nuclear plant next to every data center. So AI drives a lot of evolution of silicon. Silicon drives even more smarter AI models. It becomes a virtuous cycle. And it's also, what I think is going to get us is like, what's next going to be for the semiconductor industry? And that's truly going to be, very exciting to see.
Yep. Well, let's shift a little bit to the design side. I attended an event that Synopsys hosted, and for those of you who don't know Synopsys well, they're a leading supplier of engineering design automation tools. And they had Jensen, of course, the CEO of NVIDIA, as one of their keynotes. And he was talking about agentic AI in design. And of course, they design probably the most advanced GPUs in the industry. Blackwell is one of their latest products, 200 billion transistors on that product. And he said that his engineering teams have thousands of agent engineers working on the design of those GPUs. And so, Gerald, I was curious to get your perspective on how you think AI is going to revolutionize the design of semiconductors.
So I think first I would basically reiterate what you said, that what I see in all the domain of design, you see AI driving more need for some semiconductor that are high performance. And in return, basically, to be able to provide this silicon faster, you need AI, right? So I completely acknowledge that, even in the pure domain of design. I think what I see at the moment, right, I see different rate of adoption of AI to accelerate the design. But what I know is non-negotiable. Whether you do layouts, whether you do analog, digital, or verification, you can see that AI through agents, AI through a lot of, in some places with pattern recognition, accelerate things. And what I would say that in my domain, I don't do those GPU, but Renaissance is very good at powering those GPU. And if you want them to be able to compute faster and to do better, you need to be able to inject more power into them. That's what we do. And I can tell you that to inject more power into them, you have to design new device. You have to design a new stack of a new way of actually bringing the power into the design. And now the metal on top of your power device, you must know, becomes super important. And we've been working with some company in AI, especially one called Circuit Leap AI. And initially, they helped us to accelerate simulation by replacing another simulator we used to use. And now, after just few months, they're able to generate the design. They don't help us just to actually simulate fast and to iterate fast. It does the iteration for us. So I see that acceleration. So that's an example I want to give just to be able to explain that. I can see that, like I say, AI in design is non-negotiable in the sense that we all need to work with it, embrace it, and that will allow us actually to accelerate the virtuous cycle that actually you are talking about. So.
You know, like you have the benefit of working across all facets of what I described in the beginning of the semiconductor industry. So what's your perspective on how design is going to change moving forward?
Well, it's already, I tell you, I mean, about 6 years ago, we had some young kids out of university. So every year we have a tech council meeting. And this kid came and was like, oh, what are you guys doing about AI and ML? It's like, well, that's interesting. And, we build optical transmission gear and all that. And we started as a small little interest group. Today we have about 300 engineers, and it's working with AI and ML. And what I see even bigger revolution happening, so clearly, of course, you look at the design tools like Cadence, Synoptic. I mean, it's a no-brainer because dealing with 500 billion transistors, you just no longer can just lay out anything manually. You need something that optimizes and does all these things. But even goes next level. Think of all the software. Think of your telecommunication network. How many lines of code and all the disparate pieces of equipment sitting in the network. It used to be you would need an army of software developers in India. Today, when you deploy a new network management system, you really need about maybe 20 engineers in the US and the agentic AI. And within 3 months, you have all the scripts written to interconnect all the systems and have the autonomous network management running. And that's what we are doing today. So today, I would say probably a third of our engineers are AI and machine learning driven. About a third is hardware development because you got to run that very crazy cycle of evolution. And a third is completely living, I would say, higher layers of the network, and it's pretty much today's all AI.
That's great. Just kind of reflecting on what Oleg was saying there about software engineering, it was just about 4 years ago that I heard about ChatGPT, and how I heard about it was my neighbor, who was a software developer, and he was saying, hey, there's this thing that will automatically generate code, and I was like, wow, what is that? And he started describing it to me. And of course, today, the industry metric for those that are in this industry are that about 35% of the code, software, and firmware that's being developed is done with AI. And it's a little bit further behind, but we've started doing the way that you define the digital circuits is using RTL. And RTL is very similar. It looks like software. I mean, it's essentially how you do it. And so we've started actually doing RTL design as well internally with it. So for me, it's kind of revolutionary in the sense that, maybe I wasn't very good at writing RTL when I was an engineer, but I remember spending a day just kind of optimizing the RTL code, 20 lines of code back, this was probably like 30 years ago for a design that we had. So can you guys comment any more on sort of the specifics of the tools and how they're being applied in your companies to both accelerate time to market for products, but as well reduce the labor that's required to create a product?
Sure. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to stick to the manufacturing side of the world because we have a lot of design experts here. Mm-hmm. So primarily from manufacturing perspective, a lot of automation. And I don't see a humanoid in the near future, but it's primarily what we call as the cobots, humans and robots working together. And that is happening. That'll continue to happen more. And then you'll see a lot of built-in automation with the AI, which is going to be looking at whether it is IoT-based devices or it's primarily cameras, pulling all that information, integrating the equipment so that we get the best scheduling and our throughput from the factory that comes out better. And that can change on the fly. So, and then on the planning side of the world, when you're starting to look at demand-supply alignment, that is a big challenge, because when you have like several factories around the world, and then you have thousands, 100,000 wafers being processed across the place, and you have all kinds of restrictions in terms of what can I do where, if there's a change, how do I load it? All those things are kind of going beyond the human comprehension, so that's where we have that automated planning. Now we have agents doing it, and then you can imagine that every function is an agent, and then there is a super agent, or like there's an agentic, and it comes together. It is monitoring them to really look at, this is what you need to do. And that is happening as well.
But what I was thinking about when you were speaking is that, where design hits manufacturing is one spot anyways, is with production test. And, are you using AI tools now to enhance what you're doing with production test, either increase test compliance, coverage, et cetera, on the products that are being designed?
Absolutely. And in fact, the futuristic way of looking at it is right from the get-go, there will be an agent kind of a chip that's going to be on the wafer. And that's going to be monitoring and comparing and providing you, like almost like a digital chip version across the board. Yep. So those are all the kind of things that are happening in the manufacturing space, in the planning and supply chain, most of the ecosystem sensing. What is happening across the board? How do I plan and schedule which supplier I need to go to? That is all being managed through agentic and currently through AIs, and even supplier management, and then doing demand-supply alignment, or even quality and sustainability. So there are a lot of things that are being managed in that fashion. But the challenge is really, when you have too many of them, how do you integrate them together? How do you make sure that you get a holistic view of it? That's where we need to be focusing a little bit more.
Good. Gerald?
So Simon, you talked about the RTL, so I'm not going to talk about that, but more on the analog side, we already can see that the tedious work of a designer, which is you do your pump, your design, and you're going to have to simulate, try to find the worst corner, and try to design in that corner. I already see, actually, there are some company we're working with they can predict. They basically look at the design, they do certain simulation, very quickly they're going to predict where you need to design. They're going to accelerate that kind of behavior, but also if you decide to have some new use case, they can really accelerate the simulation to get a first order result. So I can see that pure analog design, you're going to see what we would call an optimizer in the past is going to become much better, is becoming much better to assist the analog designer to size their circuits. So.
And I can't help but ask you, because I've worked with lots of analog designers over the years, and as I say, analog designers are the most hard-headed guys I've ever worked with. How are they adapting to the new reality of AI?
I was an analog designer, sorry. I think it's slow. I can see both. I see the people like, wow, with that I'm going to be able to do more, right? Which is what we want, actually. And I see some people a little bit more fear, right? Is that going to take my job? But I think, again, when we discuss with them, guys, it's non-negotiable. We're still in a race. We still need to be competitive. There are some nations that innovate much faster than us, or at least cycle through design much faster than us. And we just need to do it. So I would say mostly yes, and we're pushing the people who are more reticent to use it. But I think you will see adoption very fast, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I'd be curious, as CEO, of course, you can produce a pretty strong mandate inside of your organization. How are you progressing in terms of getting your teams to adopt and use AI as part of their product development?
Well, I'll tell you, it very varies, right? The younger engineers, to them, it's like second nature. They go through university, they're used to it. My most difficult group is actually French. My French design center in Saint-Etienne. I had point blank, my VP of engineering says, we are not going to do this because it's going to replace us. I said, no, what's going to replace you is not AI, but engineer who is using AI. And they thought about it, and because we're all doing, you said analog, I agree with you, analog are the most hardest at it, followed by probably the RF designers, followed by the fiber optic engineers, right? Because it's an art in many ways, right? And what was really interesting and enlightening is they brought in some new engineers, and within 6 months, they're all AI. So they just see, because they think about it, it's very abstract, it's scary, but then they realize it's another tool that is significantly makes me much better. And what they're able to produce today in a matter of 6 months is much more breakthrough products that would have taken them 2-3 years ago. So I think it's becoming a second nature. And one way as a CEO you do it, you just basically restrict the OpEx budget for more engineers, and very quickly they start using tools to figure it out. Exactly. So instead of 30, they can do it with 5. And I mean, I tell you, actually, we've been hiring more engineers in the US because we don't need hundreds of engineers in India. Because with AI, we can be very competitive, and you just need a small group that works together. And with that, they do not need an army of 200, 300, coders in India. And I would say one thing is, at the end, it's really dawned on me. My alma mater is Carnegie Mellon University. And by the way, AI started at Carnegie Mellon in many ways. In the 80s, they were developing these large language models. And CS has been the fastest growing major in terms of applications for the last 40 years. 3 years ago, they saw a drop. And they are number 1, number 2 in the country with MIT, right? 2 years ago, it dropped again. And so everybody says, what's going on? Nobody wants to go study CS. Well, the younger people already figured out generic coding is not going to be the career. And I think that's the first things we see. So you have to do a lot more than just think of yourself as being a code monkey.
Thank you. I got time for one more question. We got about 3 minutes, so maybe like a 1-minute response from each of you. And of course, I have to wear my hat as a board member for the Partnership for Economic Innovation. So if we think about the semiconductor industry and AI here in the greater Phoenix area, what can we do to be the preeminent area for the advancement of this technology? Maybe start with you, Manny.
Yeah. I think Arizona is primed for a lot of growth already. TSMC has around 6 factories, 6 fabrication facilities, and I believe around $200 billion is the total investment over a 5-year cycle, right? Intel is growing in Arcatillo, and I'm sure Intel is going to come out of whatever the situation is. It's going to be our stronger semiconductor company. So the growth seems pretty positive, and also when you look at the ecosystem and the environment around it, we have excellent university, Arizona State, and we a lot of innovation, like what like the Panch was saying, right? So primarily we have good ecosystem, we have good talent that's coming out. On top of it, the demand is only going to grow, particularly for AI and data centers. So planning for what we need, in fact, people are looking to put data centers in space and things like that, right? So there is a tremendous growth. It's a matter of understanding and adjusting what we can do here, because there are also going to be challenges with water, the more we put them, and then energy. So we need to kind of really take a 10, 15-year-old. I used to be part of the International Technology Roadmap for semiconductors. This is what we used to do. What is going to happen the next 5 years? What's going to happen the next 15 years? Where is the industry going? Are we ready for it? What are the technology challenges? What are the solutions? I believe we may want to bring that in the form of AI. Where is AI going? Where is it now? And what are the different things that would support that kind of growth, and how Arizona can leverage that? That should be the end.
Thank you. Gerald?
I'll try to go fast. I would say, many have the same conclusion as you, that we are very well poised in Arizona to be able to grab actually the growth of AI and develop innovation for AI. I think now, but if you think about it now, we're talking, like you talk mostly about, it's a little bit of a manufacturing place. And I think we can reach a level where it's manufacturing, system architecting, and design, all of the above, basically. Now, to be short, I would say the biggest difficulty, and I live it every day, is the talent. We need to make sure that, I would say, the stakeholder and the policymaker understand that we need to develop the next generation of engineering. We need to excite the future kids that they want to be an AI designer, a semiconductor engineer, so that we can make sure that we can keep innovating, basically.
Well, look,
So, I tell you, I love semiconductor fabs because what people don't realize in many cases, you look at a country like Taiwan, Hsinchu, where TSMC started. I mean, today it has so many fabs in there. But what's more importantly is look at all the ecosystem around, the semiconductor tools, all the chemicals, all the design, everything grows around it. Because once you plant a fab in here, that thing is going to be here for 50, 60 years. They never go away. They transform to do different things. But what it also brings, now we're seeing ASML, Lam, all of these companies are moving to Arizona to set up maintenance center, service center, design center, development center, and it starts creating its own flywheel. So when we think about it, what it brings, because there's so much capital is invested, it acts as a magnet to build a whole ecosystem. And you're absolutely right. That's why we need a lot of very strong engineering background, because it needs talent. And that starts taking a flywheel effect. And I'm very optimistic. I think this is the new Silicon Valley 2.0. Actually, Bay Area is no longer a Silicon Valley. It's a has been. This is the future, I think, of the semiconductor industry.
yeah, the Silicon Valley is now Software Valley. So.
And it's losing that as well, because quickly AI is taking away a lot of the software. So I think this is the future. So I'm very positive in Arizona.
Well, with that, I'm at time, and so I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their great insights. So.
Folks, if you could go out to the exit, you're going to be video, so if you could just go right out through that exit. Thanks. Great panel, thank you so much. Okay, next, we're moving through, so if you need to use the restroom, go ahead, but if not, we're going right into our summit keynote with Amy Liu, non-resident senior fellow, Brookings Metro. Amy is a non-resident senior fellow at Brookings Metro within Brookings Institution. She has nearly 3 decades of experience as both a scholar and executive, committed to improving governance and public policies at the local, national, and global levels. Amy is no stranger to our region. Back in 2013, during the aftermath of the Great Recession of '08, Amy and her team at Brookings Metro engaged our regional leaders to develop a comprehensive economic strategy to diversify our metro economy and reduce our over-reliance on consumption and housing as the main driver of growth. This led to the creation of the Velocity Plan, and the Partnership for Economic Innovation stood up to implement the plan. We are excited to have Amy back with us, so please give her a round of applause as she comes up on the stage.
Excellent. The clicker works well. Hello. How is everyone? Appreciate you guys all skipping a break just to have us move straight through the program so we can end on time and end early. I really want to thank Kathleen Lee and the team and the board members of PEI for giving me the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. And I really want to congratulate you all for putting together such a strong program today. I mean, great set of speakers, really real deep knowledge on the industry verticals. We heard from Ponch about the national view of innovation. What I want to do today is talk about how we bring all those assets together to propel the regional economy forward. And as you can tell right now, the region has become a major center of advanced industries and innovation. But as you've heard now many times today, getting to this point was not by accident. And where the region goes next, to keep nurturing all the conditions for innovation, will require more intentionality and more collaboration. Now, that is precisely what happened more than 10 years ago when a group of mayors and business and civic and university leaders came together to set a brighter vision for Greater Phoenix. The result was an ambitious agenda called Velocity, and it was appropriately named this because the goal was to accelerate the transformation of the Greater Phoenix economy into a global force for innovation and technology by 2025. And this was critical because back then, Greater Phoenix's fast growth was primarily driven by real estate, construction, and tourism, which led to a proliferation of low-wage jobs that was simply not sustainable. The leaders here recognized that the region needed to raise the bar. We need to raise the quality of jobs. We need to improve the mix of industries in the economy to improve the quality of life for every Arizonan. And that required embracing the future economy, the innovation economy. And PEI, as you heard, was created to help deliver on that vision. Well, it is 2025, and as you all heard from today, enormous progress has been made. The world's largest semiconductor manufacturer is located here. It's expanding, it's spurring the influx of other tech companies. Greater Phoenix was designated as one of the nation's tech hubs, securing a federal seed grant to cement its leadership in advanced medical device manufacturing. And just earlier this year, Brookings found that through an analysis that Phoenix has emerged as a leader in AI, just as we heard in this panel, part of a cluster of metropolitan areas beyond Silicon Valley that's become a real economic player in today's race for designing, developing, and deploying artificial intelligence. So this is incredible momentum, and it's proof that setting a 10-year vision can work. It can serve as a powerful North Star in spurring meaningful progress. And I'll share that I, as you heard, was a partner with GPEC and the leaders here 10 years ago to make this vision possible, and I was truly impressed by the work that's been done. So congratulations, and I think Kathleen invited me here today to offer what should come next. So I'm going to tell you, a lot has changed in 10 years, nationally and across the globe. And I'm also going to tell you, it is not time to rest on your laurels. It is time to keep moving, it is time to keep adapting, and it's critically time to keep working together as a region to stay at the forefront of the innovation economy. So what's new over the last 10 years, and what's next? So here are 3 ideas that I want to present today. As you heard, AI is here. It's been developed for a long time, but the adoption is still early. So leaders must embrace artificial intelligence while also valuing human intelligence, valuing our workers, our people, as we innovate. AI consumes energy, so leaders must prioritize housing and energy affordability as key to attracting and retaining talent and families. And believe me, the concerns about affordability way predated this election. And what's also new is that other regions are organizing too. So leaders here must strengthen the capacity to keep delivering transformational results. Now, before I go into each of these opportunities, let me offer one other piece of context. Every year, Brookings tracks how well US metros in the country perform on inclusive economic growth. And we define that as growth in regional jobs and output that leads to prosperity, greater productivity, that improves the incomes and employment of all workers, regardless of race or zip code. That's inclusion. How well does Greater Phoenix perform on this definition of inclusive prosperity? Well, on growth, the region ranks pretty high, 14th among the 54th largest metro areas with populations over 1 million people per year, per million people. And by the way, this data is for 2013 to 2023, which basically matches nearly the 10-year period of the Velocity Plan. However, the region drops to 34th out of 54 metros when it comes to extent to which that growth is increasing the productivity and value creation in the region. And the region drops even further to 49th in another prosperity measure, which is that higher growth is actually not resulting in sufficiently higher average wages being offered to families and to workers. And as a result, the region ranks 29th among 54 metros in terms of whether people are better off as a result of the growth and productivity in this region. So what explains this middling rank? So I wanted to look at this more. And so first, the region actually ranks really third, pretty good on one measure of inclusion, which is there's an increasing number of people who are working in this region over the last 10 years, which is great. However, when workers enter the labor market, their earnings are not sufficiently rising, so the region drops to 39th on this score. In fact, for some reason, median earnings in this region have declined since the pandemic, while they have stayed roughly flat nationally. So what this data tells me is this: the founding vision of this region must remain the same. that Greater Phoenix must strive to be a center of cutting-edge innovation and upward mobility. In fact, it must do more to broaden the swath of quality digital jobs and enterprises in the region, and it must do more to make sure workers' skills keep pace and people's lives improve in this digital age. So what can leaders do? First, let's talk about the first piece. We are barreling fast, as you heard in the last panel, into this way past the information age, which is about the internet, and now barreling fast into the intelligence age, in which artificial intelligence is fast replicating human intelligence. Unless we as designers, employers, workers, leaders choose to shape a different outcome, an outcome in which people can work, have dignity, and thrive in an innovation economy. And to start, according to an MIT professor, artificial intelligence is rapidly becoming a general purpose technology. Ponch called it a platform technology, as ubiquitous as the internet, thanks to the fact that AI is piggybacking on earlier technologies like the search engines and handheld computers. So this makes AI very accessible, easy to adopt, and thus a technology we cannot ignore. We need to leverage it to meet societal objectives. And as such, AI is on the rise. You can't even open the newspaper today and not read about the flood of investment in this space, which is spurring the growth of AI startups and the demand for AI workers. Now, adopting AI has enormous promise for both industries and workers. A recent report from PwC found that industries with high exposure and use of AI experienced more than a tripling of revenue growth per worker in the last 3 years, capturing those productivity gains. And workers with AI skills are paid more, on average 56% more than workers without AI skills. But the promise of AI, But the promise of AI has not spread to all places. So Brookings produced analysis earlier this year to help regions assess their assets and their readiness to develop and deploy AI because of the belief that doing so is really critical to expanding growth and opportunity in our regions, and not embracing AI will leave regions further behind. And our country certainly does not need more geographic haves and have-nots. Now, the good news is that Greater Phoenix is deemed an AI star hub with attributes along 3 data-driven dimensions that our researchers examined. Does the regions have AI talent? Is the talent developing AI solutions? And are there firms adopting AI? First, what we found was that by far, the nation's AI leadership right now is still highly centered in the Bay Area and San Jose. Silicon Valley far surpasses all metros in capturing the lion's share of the nation's AI assets and talent, innovation, adoption. Right now, very few metros even come close. But there's this next tier of metros, 28 that we call star hubs, because they exhibit strength in all these 3 areas too. And Phoenix is among this tier, alongside Boston, Austin, DC, and other metropolitan areas. And I would say this is now your competitive peer set. Now, amid this new competition, leaders here can set a higher bar. Now, this star map shows that Phoenix has balanced assets. However, there are still ways to further strengthen your strengths. For instance, there are 30 metros, as we discussed, the 28 plus 2, that make up these top 2 tiers of AI excellence. I'd say that you'd want Phoenix to be in the top 15, right, of that 30. What this right shows is Phoenix's rank among metros in those AI assets. If the bar is to be the top 15 of those 30 metros, Phoenix could do more to A, graduate more PhDs in computer science and engineering right now, which is ranked the region 22nd. It could do a better job in attracting federal contracts and VC funding as a validation of innovation capacity, which is now ranks the region 32nd and 26th respectively. And on AI adoption, the region ranks 76 in terms of the fact that firms and the extent to which firms are actually using AI. So those stubborn engineers apparently really are prevailing. So in short, there are more opportunities to better organize and facilitate the region's innovations assets here. Meanwhile, adopting AI also requires minimizing its risks. One of the biggest is AI's potential to undercut workers' economic potential and their well-being. On the left is a list of all the tasks that generative AI can undertake: writing, analysis, generating code, all the things you've heard. But now we have the arrival of agentic AI. Now with agentic AI, not only can they do those hard skills, they also have the added capacity to replicate the soft skills, once considered the ways to keep humans protected from tech disruption: creativity, empathy, insights, in which machines now do a better job than doctors diagnosing medical conditions. Meanwhile, the workers most vulnerable to automation from generative AI, they skew higher skilled and they skew female. This is a list of occupations rank ordered by their automation potential and their gender profile. At the top, what you see is office and administrative support functions, of which a whopping 71% of those tasks can be automated, and 71% of those jobs are filled by women. This is obviously opposite of the automation's past impacts on physical labor jobs and filled primarily by men. Now, the next set of vulnerabilities are tasks done by legal and financial services workers, which is filled by a more balanced mix of male and female workers, but again, reflects the tilt towards high-skilled service workers in our economy. And lastly, AI also has the potential to undermine opportunities for early career workers. This chart illustrates the impact of AI on different positions in the legal field, as an example. And as you can see, the tasks with the highest automation potential are often done by young associates, organizing legal documents, preparing and reading legal briefs. The least vulnerable tasks are filled by more senior partners, negotiating settlements, presenting legal arguments, representing clients in court. Clearly, people still matter, but how do we make sure that young people still have the critical path to succeed in their careers? Now, a number of polls now show that the public is actually very skeptical about the benefits of AI. What I want to say is that in general, the impact of AI on the future of workers remains unknown. There are certainly job cuts, such as Amazon's recent announcements to cut up to 30,000 jobs to make way for AI efficiency. On the other hand, employers are creating new jobs that didn't previously exist: AI product managers, prompt engineers, AI ethics officers. What is known is that there is no AI jobs apocalypse yet, in part because AI adoption has been slow. And that's according to a new study by Brookings and Yale using BLS data. What is also known is that the jobs will change. By 70% of jobs will change by 2030, according to LinkedIn, which is, again, 5 years from now. Not that fast, not that far away. And that means employers and leaders have a real power to shape AI's impact, such as creating a workplace and an economy that adopts AI and prizes workers. Doing so will also help the public trust the technology and trust the AI economy and trust AI employers. And that is what the CEO of Walmart is trying to do. He asserted earlier this month that Walmart will be the best at adopting AI tools to add value and drive growth, and that Walmart will retrain its workers so Walmart can remain a really large employer for years to come. Second consideration, leaders here can prioritize affordability to attract and retain talent and households. Now, Arizona's cost of living, I understand, has surpassed the national average for the first time in 2023, undercutting this region's, one of the region's competitive advantages. And this is according to a study released early this year by the Housing Research Center at Morrison Institute. On the left, what you see is that the growth in median household incomes could not keep pace with the growing cost of rent, 4% versus 23%. So in short, rent outpaced income nearly 6 to 1. And on the right, the typical price of a home in Arizona now outpaced homeowner income by 4.6 times, which is up from 2.8 times the rate in 2010. Meanwhile, the growth of data centers to support this insatiable demand for AI compute power will likely increase the cost of household water bills. This graphic basically examines the water usage, or depicts the water usage of a new Microsoft data center here in Goodyear. This one data center consumes as much water as that of 670 households in the community, according to Microsoft's own research. And such data centers are also driving up the cost of energy bills across the country, including here in Greater Phoenix. I know it might be hard to see the details of this map. This is a product of research released this past September between Bloomberg and a global firm that analyzes data center trends. And what this map shows is that between 2020 and 2025, electricity bills soared in regions around the country by as much as 110% in Columbus, 52% in Houston, and 32% here in Greater Phoenix. And what is common about all these rate hikes is they all took place in regions that were located within 50 miles of significant data center activities. And as you well know, the rise of extreme heat in the South and the Mountain West will only put more pressure on water and energy use. So the future is going to be how we embrace the innovation economy, yes, while minimizing its risks on workers, on natural resource supply, on household budgets. And the third consideration is an important one. It is really critical for this region to strengthen its capacity to act, its capacity to respond to this moment and deliver transformational results for the people of Greater Phoenix. Not only is that good for Arizona, but it's also critical because, you know what, other regions are doing it. And in fact, just as Phoenix launched its new vision 10 years ago, a number of other regions were doing the same. These regions now are at the vanguard of transforming their economies towards next generation industries, from steel to quantum in Chicago, from appliance manufacturing to semiconductors in central New York, from healthy foods to medtech in Minneapolis, St. Paul. As they do, these leaders are intentionally centering people and greater upward mobility as well. Twin goals, not either or, but both and. How did they get there? What makes these regional efforts transformational? Well, first, these leaders are activating two types of capabilities. On the left, they are building powerful coalitions horizontally within their region, across government, business, university, community, philanthropy. However, they are also working vertically, collaborating up with their state and their federal partners, and also collaborating nose down with specific neighborhood groups or business district organizations in their region. And as they organize, they are demonstrating the ability to do four things. They can articulate a vision for inclusive prosperity. They can build teams cross-sector, vertically and horizontally to achieve that vision. And they can secure capital to finance their efforts. And they can execute, designing, overseeing, coordinating a suite of initiatives to deliver their vision. And the suite of initiatives often looks like this, reflecting the scale and complexity of a regional economy. They focus on high-performing business dynamism, entrepreneurship, education, workforce development, land use and placemaking, in which the vision of a modern inclusive economy shows up physically, often revitalizing key neighborhoods or communities within the region. And lastly, these regions are going beyond business as usual economic development to something more transformative. A shift in focus from transactional recruitment to adopting market-shaping initiatives. A shift in investment from siloed dollars and fragmented different projects to co-investment in just a few big moves. And there's a shift in alignment from individual organizations doing their thing to aligned delivery across multiple organizations. Now, this whole approach, I know, sounds almost impossible. It's certainly harder to do. Yet it can be done, and it's actually being done, and the reward is more meaningful. So one example I want to talk about is Chicago. There's been a great deal of public attention, I know, on public safety in the Windy City. What is less well known is that leaders have been working on a series of economic strategies, which includes boosting opportunity in the south and west side of Chicago, which is where crime is most prevalent. If you fast forward to today, Chicago is now positioned to be the nation's leader in quantum, with a massive new quantum and microelectronics campus to be built on a former US Steel site on the south side of Chicago. Now, this moment was no accident. In fact, it was due to really hard civic work and collaboration over the last 7 years to do things differently. Here are some highlights. First, P33 is the civic coordinator, much like PEI aspires to do. P33 was created by high-profile business leaders to organize the region's innovation assets after its failed bid to woo Amazon HQ2 back in 2018. So P33 has been around only since 2018. Of the many roles it plays, P33 is the entity that made the quantum campus possible. It had a vision of an inclusive tech economy, of which quantum is just one part. It facilitated the very partnerships to make the vision possible, from the state to the feds to the neighborhood groups to key players across the region. It secured the investments for this vision. It itself operates a tech skills training and apprenticeship program to help community college graduates and local workers be part of this vision. And as you can see from this list, the ecosystem includes corporations, universities, philanthropy, state, local government, federal, all of whom have co-invested real dollars, you can see there, and resources to make this quantum sector possible. At the heart is PsiQuantum, which is a Palo Alto-based startup that will build America's first million-qubit scale fault-tolerant quantum computer, creating up to 150 jobs in the next 5 years. Since it was announced last year, 3 more quantum firms have announced locations in Chicago, including a French quantum computing firm and establishing its first US headquarters on that site. As part of the quantum site, guess what? DARPA now has chosen Chicago to be its lead partner in testing quantum applications alongside 2 federal labs. University of Illinois, its engineering program will literally operate the quantum campus, bringing its wealth of research expertise, faculty, students to the site alongside Northwestern and University of Chicago. And of course, P33 and the partners are absolutely focused on making sure this vision facilitates redevelopment and brings opportunities to the residents and small businesses in the South Side of Chicago. So in short, one project embodying all the elements of a strong innovation ecosystem built over years, Chicago shows it is possible to have vision, build a strong set of teams, organize capital, deliver a set of aligned initiatives in which advanced industry dynamism, skills training, placemaking can all deliver a high-tech economy that can work for all. One more thing, states matter. And there are states that are modeling ways to support their regions in their vision of innovation, economic mobility, and affordability. And here are just a few examples. On housing affordability, the Texas State Legislature approved 7 bipartisan bills this legislative season, 2025, to build more homes and address the affordable housing crisis in the state. Those bills have been signed by Governor Abbott. On energy affordability, the Illinois State Legislature just passed a few months ago a major bill also signed by the governor to invest in energy storage technology to strengthen the energy grid amid all the pressures from the data centers. And the goal and the reason they're doing it is to keep electricity rates stable for households in the long run. On regional competitiveness, the state of Indiana now gives grants to regions as high as $45 million each to support their big transformational plans. This was a program designed by Governor Holcomb in 2022 with annual legislative support. And on placemaking, the state of Ohio announced a major effort a few years ago to invest $3 billion over 10 years to fuel the creation of 3 world-class innovation districts each anchored by universities and healthcare systems like Cleveland Clinic in Cincinnati, Columbus, Cincinnati. The goal is the state understands that it wants to be, and it, as part of its competitive advantage, it wants to be the go-to leader in healthcare innovation through these regional partnerships. All of these sectors are very similar to the ones that you guys care about. And what I want to show here is in an era where federal investments remain tenuous, unpredictable, they come and go, what is most stable and predictable is that regions and states working together to build the economy from the ground up. So let me close where I began. This region has done a remarkable job in catapulting Greater Phoenix to the forefront of global innovation. So don't stop. What's next is for leaders to take your collective strengths to the next level. I believe that's the aspiration for this region, and I believe it can be done because you've already done it. The ability now is to prove this vision in which global innovation results in a prosperous future for Greater Phoenix and for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. That was a great presentation. Pardon me 1 second as I pull this up. And next, who's got the clicker? Amy. Just kidding. I have the clicker. Not yet. Okay, next up to the stage, Mr. David Russo, President, SRP, and board member of PEI. Come on up, sir. And we'll have the other panelists come up.
You want to intro those? They told me to have you intro them as they come up. Okay. Are we doing the panel?
Panel?
Feels like we're upstaging the senator already.
We're awarding.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good. Okay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully, Senator Kelly's not waiting. I'll try.
He's waiting, probably. It's okay.
Oh, okay. I'll try to make quick work of this. Again, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the innovation and leadership in Arizona. We're gathered here today to present the Champion of Innovation Award from the Partnership for Economic Innovation, recognizing individuals who drive technological progress and economic growth. Innovation is at the heart of continued prosperity, and today we honor a true champion of that cause. In fact, I was thinking, as long as I've been familiar with PEI and this particular effort, we could rename the award in his honor because he's played a consistent role. In the current Arizona budget, he secured $500,000 for the Medical Technology Applied Research Program, a groundbreaking public-private partnership supporting medtech development. The investment matches private sector resources, multiplying the impact and accelerating the development of life-changing technologies. Since 2019, Representative Winiger has been a steadfast advocate for applied research, helping to fund programs that have provided nearly $10 million in public support and leveraged over $12 million in private sector funding. The ripple effect of this work is evident in the economic growth and increased competitiveness of our state. Beyond his legislative achievements, Representative Winiger brings the perspective of a small business owner in the restaurant industry, deeply understanding the challenges and opportunities entrepreneurs face. His commitment to fostering an environment where businesses and research thrive is reflected in Chandler's continued growth and reputation. Again, the Champion of Innovation Award celebrates leaders like Representative Winiger, whose vision, dedication, and actions have made Arizona stronger and more innovative. His leadership inspires us all to invest in the future and support the growth of cutting-edge industries. Congratulations, Representative Winiger, and thank you for your outstanding service for the Arizona innovation ecosystem. Can I get you to join us? I don't know if there's no script necessarily. Would you like to speak now? You're about to.
Yeah, let's just do some Q&A.
Okay, all right.
I thought it was cool that was real. I might be upstaging Senator. That'd be a flex, but I guess not.
Strange times.
Yeah.
we live in. Okay, well, stand by.
Okay.
All right, now we're going to have a discussion along these lines. And so I talked about Representative Winter. Now I need to introduce our other. Is that not happening?
Yeah, you're keep going.
Just keep going. Okay, we're Arno. Okay. Hold it higher. Okay. Arno Merkel is joining us for a discussion about the state's innovation goals. He will share how the applied research program helped his company develop one of the most interesting technological applications in the chip manufacturing industry. Arno is the co-founder and CEO of Crystal Sonic. He has a PhD, that makes one of us, in the material science from Northwestern University, and his company uses sound waves to cut the wafer material used in the manufacturing of microchips. Also, Arno and his team have developed a new technology that can reduce the cost of chip manufacturing by as much as 15%. He participated in the PEI Applied Research Program, and he can tell us firsthand how the program helped his company validate his breakthrough technology. Please welcome Arno Merkel. Forgive the rough start that we're off to. I guess Representative Winiger, do you want to kick us off with what this space means to you?
Yes, thank you so much again for having me. It's an exciting space. I mean, innovation and being from Chandler, I was a council member there for 8 years, a long time ago. And so you have Intel and you have different technologies in the corridor, and it takes planning, like the speaker before us was saying. It's intentional. And, we preserve the whole price corridor for that kind of thing. But it means so much, and if you think about the transformation, I know we have a ways to go, but when we hit the recession back in the 2008, 2009, and not to be smart, it was great. We needed this at the time, but this whole economy was built on construction. And it's not like that anymore. We have a really diversified portfolio, a lot in tech and innovation all over the state. And I think it's really important, but it's also, again, intentional. Governor Ducey kind of kicked it off when I was in the legislature, and I ran a lot of bills for him. And one that kind of kicked it off was the infrastructure bill. So sometimes we're talking about large things, and that was to help out Intel. So when they build a water plant for Chandler, that Intel doesn't have to pay for an asset, that they can use the construction sales tax, and that spilled over into TSMC and helping recruit them as well. So sometimes it's large, but then sometimes I think it's signals either from the business community or from legislators on smaller things, saying that you're open to certain technologies. We ran a bill called the FinTech Sandbox that told people that, for financial technology, you can come here with less regulation, be overseen still to be protected by the Attorney General's office, but a little less regulation so you could kind of get your feet under you. Or cryptocurrency bills that I've ran a lot on, trying to get that kind of innovation flavor going. So I think it's intention, it's getting behind and supporting people and talking to people, legislators who, or policymakers at the city level that are interested in these things and want to help you advance them. And then also staying out of the way somewhat. I mean, we were just talking about AI in the thing before. I don't believe in regulating technologies, newer technologies, at its genesis. Now, obviously, you have to protect consumers to some point, but when you do that, you can contort how they're going to naturally grow. Autonomous vehicles. Governor Ducey put out an executive order with some parameters, and we were the first in the nation with Waymo. And then I ran a bill that codified those orders, in law. But the reason is we were open to that is why, one of the big reasons why it happened here. And I think the same thing with AI. If you overregulate it too early or in these other industries, then you're going to stifle it, and other people around the world are going to be the leaders in it and not the United States.
Thank you. That's great. Arno, do you want to talk about, as from someone's perspective that's building a tech business here in the state, how public policy could be helpful in that process?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the panel today. So public policy can play like a number of roles. Maybe I give a little bit of a background, kind of where we came from initially, and a little bit of that story. It'll kind of play a role there. So even though I do have a PhD in material science, I take zero credit for inventing our technology. It actually came out of the brain of my wife. So she invented this acoustic technology to split wafers and with acoustics. So we use sound to break things very carefully. Now, why would you want to do that? Oleg, who was up here earlier, he had mentioned like what's next in semiconductors. Like silicon has run out of space pretty much. These next generation materials like silicon carbide, gallium nitride, there's a whole slew of other ones are incredibly challenging to grow and produce. And so our technology plays a role in that we can make much more efficient use of those by cutting it without wasting the material. It turns out in the standard manufacturing steps, like 95% of that material is lost, and it's the single largest cost in production. And so we're trying to tackle that. So that's a little bit of background context of where we came from. So we merged out of ASU. Again, it was an invention in my wife's lab, who's faculty member in electrical engineering, and her PhD student about a decade ago put him on this challenge. And we put the band together about 5 years ago and founded the company. We had some IP some patent filings associated with that. And we kind of scrapped with a few grants that we had to get some proof data. And so where public policy really comes in, we emerged out of the lab. We found our own space. We're based at Wexford Connect Labs near downtown Phoenix. We've been there for about 2.5 years. And programs like the Applied Research Center through the PEI played a critical role for us at the right time. We had been supported from the Department of Energy, the NSF, and NASA on further developing our solution for given materials. And it's programs like that that are independent of federal grants that can be used for cost share and things like that. At the right time, we could pivot, and we saw this opportunity in a material known as silicon carbide. So if many of you have noticed gallium nitride and silicon carbide, your chargers basically are smaller today, your cell phone charger. Everything that powers like an AI data center or anything that's in an electric vehicle, those chips are more and more advanced, and they're not based on silicon. And so this grant through the ARC came along, and we saw this opportunity in silicon carbide, but we were stuck. We're a startup, we have no cash. We have a couple of grants in some other areas, and we have some foundational technology. And so we met Kathleen and we met Wes, and we got to talking about and we were just in a new lab, and we saw this opportunity that we wanted to jump on, and this program became available. And so we were able to get the resources to buy some very expensive wafers and break them, but breaking them in a way that was very attractive to a number of players. So we saw onsemi here, Renesas, and some others, and Honeywell, they all play in this space. But the gap for us to get from our 3-person team, now we're 10 people, all the way to working with a partner the size of them or an Intel or TSMC, that's not a valley of death. That's like a Grand Canyon of death in this industry. It's really pretty substantial. And so these programs like this enabled us to basically get the initial proof data that excited the industry. We won some awards at some international conferences. We got awards for our abstracts there. And then quickly, we were able to spin that into very close to $3 million in investment through DARPA and venture capital. We won the LAM Capital from LAM Research, their international venture competition, as well as the NSTC award. So like one thing led after another in a very short time frame, like the 12-month time frame. So we started working about 2 years ago, and within about 12 months after we'd finished that program, we were able to basically 10x that investment from the ARC, not including whatever's coming down the pipeline now. And so it's like those kinds of programs, in addition to incentivizing work with established industry leaders like the Honeywells, onsemi's, and others, and incentivizing programs where very small, scrappy startups can work with them, and finding funding available for that to also keep it regional is pretty important. So I'll stop there. I have more to add, so thank you.
No, it's terrific. Closing thoughts, Representative, I'm intrigued to know how hard of a sell this sort of investment is to your colleagues. And you've obviously been a leader, but are you one of one, or do you feel like you're building a consensus?
I would say a little of both. I mean, what really helps is Wes one time brought a whole bunch of people down there, at least I know. Legislators, it's a lot easier if they can see things right in front of them. They take us down to the lettuce fields sometimes in Yuma, and you can say all day long, well, you know, we produce 90% of the leafy greens in the winter in the United States, and that sentence flows well. But when you see it in action in Yuma, right on the border, it drives it home. And the same way with this, when we toured and saw a lot of those things, and the legislators could actually see what's happening, and then you can explain to them that, you know, your company is going to grow and hopefully stay here, and there's going to be more employees, more people paying taxes, and you can kind of build that out, that it is a reinvestment in the community. And I just thank so much for everything that you all are doing. Aside from that, the couple things I think to look out for is the entire ecosystem is, this happens in almost every industry lately, is the competitiveness. When you have new technologies, you're going to sometimes have incumbent players who want to regulate you out of business. Think Uber and taxi cabs and Airbnb and hotels, and it happens in the alcohol world like you would not believe. And so I find that almost any time there's a new technology, cryptocurrency and banking, there's always these incumbent players with built-in ways that the way things have been done for years, and they don't necessarily want to iterate. They want to keep things the same because they have it pretty good right now. And so I think you have to be on guard for that and just try for the most part in those situations, push through and just look at how some of these, you know, we have the bigger projects and the things that we do. Like I said earlier, some of these big things that do great things for the entire region. And then we have sometimes the smaller things that help us grow some of those smaller players. It's all them who does. I mean, most legislators, I mean, I'm the most learned on these things probably, but that's a low bar, so that's not saying a ton. You know, helping educate them more and more, come down there and talk to them and try to show them exactly what you're doing. Because I think most of them, like me, would be just fascinated by the businesses and the technologies we see being born.
Sure. No, that's well said. Well, Arno, as a symbol of why this award and why PEI works in this area, would you like to wrap us up?
Yeah, I'll say, you know, as having taken the risk to found a startup, you know, I had a comfortable job in a bigger industry. I started with a big, large international company, went to a smaller, like medium-sized startup, and then this is the first time I've started a business. I think, you know, creating a space for that ecosystem to thrive, I think we're in a very unique position here in Arizona, especially in semiconductors. We got a few comments from the other panels about this, like manufacturing is fantastic that it's here, but it's the whole ecosystem around it. Like a monocrop is not that healthy. You want a diverse garden, and that includes R&D and the people who want to take the risks to figure out how to do something new. You know, our superpower generally as a country and the science and innovation is, you know, people trying to figure out things that have never been done before. And that takes a certain amount of upfront capital, upfront risk, and we're in the middle of it. You know, We have our own challenges day to day. Most days are not that great, and then there's spectacular days. And so having programs like this to give you a boost and to incentivize working together with established industry players before you're ready for prime time that's where the magic really happens, and I think that could be of immense benefit to the state and the region.
Great. Please join me in thanking these two leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Russo, and thank you, panelists. Okay, and next, we got a little early on the first one, but we do have a video message from Senator Mark Kelly, and we're going to tee that up. I know we look alike, but we are in fact different people. I did once tell Senator Kelly I could be his body double. I don't think he found it as funny as I did.
Hey folks, I'm Senator Mark Kelly, and I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in person, but glad to have a chance to say a few words. When we look at where our state is headed, I see incredible momentum. From Flagstaff to Tucson, and right here in the Valley. Arizona isn't just adopting new technology, we are building it. We're creating the tools, products, and ideas that will define the next generation of economic growth. And that kind of progress doesn't happen by accident. It starts with people like all of you who've worked so hard to turn our state into the growing hub for innovation that it is today. And I've been doing what I can in the Senate to support and build on what you've been doing. That's why I've worked to strengthen STEM education, expand apprenticeships, and support workforce training programs that connect Arizonans with good-paying jobs right here at home. Because when we invest in talent, we're investing in our state's future. This has been paying off with thousands of jobs in our growing semiconductor manufacturing sector, which has seen record investment in recent years thanks to my CHIPS and Science Act. I've also been looking ahead to not only create jobs, but foster the conditions that help innovation thrive. Policies that ensure that the next big idea can be developed and manufactured right here in Arizona. And that includes responsible development of artificial intelligence, making sure that we're using these powerful tools to boost productivity without compromising privacy or leaving Americans without good-paying jobs. And it includes investing in industries critical to our competitiveness, from semiconductors and aerospace to clean energy and advanced manufacturing. But innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It depends on infrastructure that connects people, ideas, and opportunity. That's why I've worked across the aisle to secure investments in broadband, transportation, and energy systems. And when our universities and cities and private sector partners align, they don't just innovate, they innovate at scale. All of you are so critical to making that happen. And it's why our state is at the forefront of so many emerging technologies and industries. Together, we can transform Arizona into one of the top global markets for technology and research, fueled by world-class institutions and a workforce ready to take on the challenges of tomorrow. As a Navy pilot, an astronaut, and now as your senator, I've seen what's possible when talented people are given the tools and the trust to push boundaries. That's what today is about, boosting economic growth through research, talent, and technology. And I couldn't be prouder that Arizona is leading the way. And I look forward to continuing to work with all of you to grow our economy and ensure that Arizona remains a great place to start a business and raise a family. And thank you, and have a great day.
Man, what a handsome guy. Next up, a very important panel. We have the key pillars of innovation panel on infrastructure. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator first. I'm going to say a few kind words, and then we'll bring him up and the rest of the panelists. Former mayor, City of Mesa, John Giles, during his time as mayor, a time of politics in which kindness was not really a hallmark. Mr. Giles has always been a man of empathy, humility, good leadership, and honestly, one of the best elected officials we have probably ever seen in this state. Also, great guy for food recommendations in Mesa. So if you need a good spot to eat tonight, ask Mayor Giles. He knows them all. So without further ado, I'm still calling him Mayor. Mayor John Giles, come on up, sir.
Thank you very much. Let's please have the panel go ahead and come on up. I should just drop the mic and stop talking right now, right? That was a very generous introduction. Thank you very much. But so I concluded 10 years as mayor of Mesa in January, and so I'm still kind of going through some withdrawals, and so I can't help but not welcome you to Mesa, Arizona. We're so glad that you're here. And also, I've been bending Amy's ear just a little bit from Brookings. I want to tell you that coming to these types of forums is, please don't think it's a non-productive thing to do, or that there's a lot of talk and good things don't ever happen. Just about 10 years ago, I went to an innovation seminar at Brookings, and I walked into the room, and there was a bunch of pamphlets on the table. I unfortunately just missed the previous speaker, but I started thumbing through the booklets, and it was on creating innovation zones in cities and how that was a great way to rejuvenate cities and bring economic activity. And as I thumbed through that booklet, I said, my gosh, this is a picture of downtown Mesa, Arizona. And I literally recognized landmarks, and it just really spoke to me as they're talking about my city here. And so I quickly went around the room and picked up as many of those pamphlets as I possibly could so I could take them back home and use them as missionary pamphlets, to go out and try to get something going here. And the building that you sit in today, right now, is a result of me going to that conference 10 years ago. If I hadn't done that, we would be somewhere else right now. Don't clap for me. What I'm saying is this stuff works, right? I mean, let's not just think that we're here, to have intellectual exercises and to pat people on the back. And this will be an effective exercise if we take what we're using here and commit to doing something with it, right? And so welcome to the Mesa Innovation Zone and to the Mix Center. And also, I can't help but say, I hope you enjoyed lunch in the studio. That was, during my childhood, that was the Mesa Library. And then after we built a bigger library across the street, that became pretty much a boarded up data center. It was a horrible use of a beautiful, inviting, architecturally interesting building, and now we're just thrilled that it's an inviting place, and I'm inviting you on behalf of the city to please utilize the Mix Center, please utilize the studio. We're so happy that you're here and you're introduced to these facilities. So that's my commercial. Thank you very much for letting me get that out. I've really enjoyed the program thus far, and I want to kind of comment on some of or ask this panel some questions about some of the things that we've just heard. But first, just to keep it very current, on the topic of infrastructure, I think those of us that have been paying attention to the local and state news over the past month or so, there have been a couple of examples, one down in Tucson about a month ago, where the Tucson City Council voted unanimously not to authorize an infrastructure project for a data center. And then just last week, at the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, the rejection of in a county island in the city of Phoenix, a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project for a railroad facility. In both of those scenarios, there were literally hundreds of citizens, of residents that were in those two local government bodies holding signs and very exercised, asking them to not authorize these infrastructure projects that would have brought billions of dollars of investment and thousands of jobs to our economy. So just to start off on a light, cheerful note, I thought I'd ask, how does that scare the bejeebies out of you guys? And if so, how can we adopt economic development policies that can thread that needle, and so that power and electricity and telecom infrastructure are the reasons that people are saying, Phoenix is at the top of my list. David, there's a big softball. Just kidding.
Well, yeah, I guess first off, I'm sure it makes you miss being mayor, having those sort of public forums to interact with. I guess I'll borrow from Representative Winiger's answer where he talked about how you ultimately you can't get anything done unless you build a community of support for it, and how best to do that. And he cited the very real example where constituents and of the business community need to show up and make that case at the legislature. And I think that's the same thing here, that you see maybe several hundred people or voters advocating for a position, but what you don't see is the very real story of how that plays out in terms of the economic impact on our community, all the way from academic outcomes that are warranted if you have those kinds of industries in your market, to an enhanced education because of our expanded tax base. So I think ultimately you need to probably show the amount of strength that the business community is remiss for not being organized in that context to offer the counter.
Yeah, I'm sure the proponents of those infrastructure projects wish they could get a do-over and go back and do more legwork, right, with those neighborhoods that are showing up. But David needs no introduction, but Stacy, thank you so much for representing APS. Stacy Durston, you are the Vice President of External Affairs. Did I get that correct?
You did, yes.
Thank you very much. What's your perspective on that?
So I think you hit on a lot of great points, and yes, those are two very high-profile projects. Most recently, where we saw the community come out in opposition, and I won't speak for my colleague over here at SRP, but we've been in the business of building infrastructure to support customers for a long time, 140 years. Of serving Arizona for APS. So we have a lot of examples of what it looks like when it's done well, and more importantly, opportunities for improvement. And these are, some of our colleagues and friends behind these projects, and I think you're right. There's probably a step back that says we should have done a few things differently, and I absolutely will not articulate what I would do. But the reality is the communities have to be a part of large infrastructure development projects, whether it's a data center, an advanced manufacturing facility, a transmission line to serve that customer, or a generating facility. And the reality is we have such an amazing growth story here in Arizona, and the growth that we've experienced over the last 5 years, just 5 years alone, is remarkable, and it is not going to stop. So as a community, both business community, the leaders within the community, we have to figure out how to come together to ensure that we provide enough time, enough transparency, enough collaboration with the community when we have these large infrastructure projects. That doesn't mean we'll be successful on all of those, but if you don't start at the grassroots with the communities that are impacted, and even when you do, you're still going to have folks show up with the T-shirts or the buses. We've been doing this for a long time, and that's not uncommon. But being transparent with the community and working with them and finding alternatives is really, really important. Now, I'm not here to say that there would have been alternatives in both of those projects to get them across the finish line or to have them in a different position, but I think those are things we have to keep in mind moving forward, because we are building billions and billions and billions of dollars of infrastructure to connect customers, just like Mayor Giles just reviewed with us. So we have our work cut out for us, and I will tell you, APS, we stand committed to partner with those customers to do it the best that we possibly can with the best outcome for our customers and ultimately the prosperity of the state.
Thank you, Stacy. LJ, you are the president of AT&T for the state of Arizona, and I'm sure I'm getting that not exactly right, but you're in along with power and water. obviously you're in the telecom and fiber optic business, and relative to this question, and you have a great opportunity to really piss off a lot of people as well, in that you're out digging up the right-of-way, you're plowing through people's begonias to get that fiber optic hair into their house. But what are your thoughts on how do we do this without having a NIMBY, backlash that kills infrastructure projects?
Well, I do think that it's important.
I think you can push that up a little bit.
Or just hold it at towards the top.
Now we're on. Okay. I agree with the premise that transparency is key on this. We have fiber projects going on all over the country at any given time. We're one of the largest investors in fiber, and that requires a lot of work with local communities. And as you know, Mayor Giles, we've had fiber projects here in Mesa, and we always try to work in a transparent fashion and an upfront fashion, but you're right, it does sometimes require that we go in and we dig up streets. And we found that communicating with local communities, and especially with local government, so that they're not surprised as we go into this as well, that where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing, and then what the end result is going to be for that. And that is, in our case, a fiber connection, hopefully, to someone's home, and then everything that enables. So making that case, I think, is very important. I will tell you that what you've seen here with some of the issues in critical infrastructure running into problems is not unique to Arizona. We've run into that in other places as well. And it's not always just with big facilities. Sometimes relatively small things like a new road or upgrading power lines or a bridge, building a bridge, those types of things can all trigger that. But I do think that in our case, transparency is key. And here's why, because fiber is not something that you can build really quickly. If you don't have a foothold in a place and you don't have an open door to go in there, it takes time to put that together and to put all the pieces in place. So knowing exactly where you are with the community is critical, because you can go to a lot of work to bring fiber, bring infrastructure into an area. And if it's not handled correctly, or if you run into a problem, you can strand a lot of investment. And that's investment that could go to other places that do want that fiber.
Well, thank you, LJ. And I appreciate you pointing out that so far what we've talked about is not a problem that is at all unique to the Valley of the Sun. This is all across the United States, cities and towns, and NIMBYism is a universal challenge for economic development everywhere. But let's shift to maybe an issue that is more unique to the Valley of the Sun. David, I'm going to address this one to you. I recall about 3 or 4 years ago, I had a great conversation with Mayor Gallego at the end of a very long day for her. Earlier that day, the Wall Street Journal had published a story talking about how the lack of water in the Phoenix metro region was going to be a limiting factor in the economic development, the continued economic development of our region. And Mayor Gallego had spent the entire day on national media ever since that article came out, rebutting that article. So again, this is, earlier in the day we heard people talk about some of the perceptions, perhaps the correct or incorrect perceptions about our metro area and the limiting factors there. But to what extent talk a little bit about the water supply, and to what extent that's a perceived challenge versus a real challenge?
Well, it could be a very long answer, but I think in essence, it's really a bid for long-term planning. And Stacy mentioned how long APS and their predecessors have been around. Salt River Project's been around since 1902. Someone had the foresight to declare or dedicate national forests, which comprises a big part of the Salt River's watershed, pre-1900. And so the combination of that planning and the Reclamation Act being passed under Teddy Roosevelt in 1902 have given raise to the major infrastructure project. So we have the oldest infrastructure project, federal water project in the country. We also have the youngest in the form of the CAP. And so I would argue that that kind of long-term planning and those two massive infrastructure projects put us in a great position to be successful and viable well into the future. What we can't be is reckless, and I think you see a lot of people in the water conservation business that's just integral to their daily jobs. And agriculture was why a lot of that water was originally developed, but agriculture has a monetary motivation, and so that water, fortunately, I think is here and might be remarketed over time. But I think the state's in great shape because of that long-term planning, despite the fact that we're in the desert.
When I was in the position of being challenged on this issue, I recall I loved to point out that our valley and the state of Arizona is really the only place in the country where before you can build anything, you have to demonstrate a 100-year guaranteed supply of water. That's not the case anywhere else in the country.
Right. Yeah. As a function of the 1980 Groundwater Management Act, the study that, or the news that got a lot of national attention, which served to ruin Mayor Gallego's day, revolved around the declaration that there was a 96% so in other words, there was a 4% gap in Arizona or Phoenix active management area being in compliance with having the ability to demonstrate a 100-year assured water supply. So I would argue if you have 4 years out of 100 and you have 96 years to plan towards that, I like that, those numbers and our chances. But again, I think it reminds, it's always been in an economic development context the thing that Arizona is most vulnerable for is explaining what our water situation is. But I think there's an awful lot of, like I said, really long-term planning that's gone into being able to give a sincere, positive answer.
I agree with you. It's a simple question, but it's a complex answer. I recall being in city council meetings where this issue was being discussed, and I turned to my city manager and I said, Mr. Brady, this is going to be an easy thing, but we need to educate people. Let's just do a supply and demand chart. We know what our supply of water is. We know what the projected demand is. That'll be a quick, easy way to demonstrate to people there is a problem or there isn't a problem. And it took our water engineers 6 months to create that chart. Because, as you know, every city has its own water portfolio, and it's a pretty complicated thing. And there's multiple ways to anticipate demand. But in the end, the answer was, yes, you've got the water. But it took, 12 lines and 14 colors on this chart to actually, tell the story that that's not going to be a crisis. Stacy, apparently we need more than just water to make the valley work. Let's talk about electricity. I've heard that the anticipation is that over the next decade, there's going to be a sharp increase for the demand of electricity in the greater Phoenix metro. What is APS doing to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and you're right. And to piggyback on the couple of times you mentioned long-term planning, that's the one thing I think we do very well as utilities, and we're not unique here in Arizona. We look out 15 and 20 years into the future because these investments take time to site, permit, and put into service. So if you hear nothing from me going forward, we do a lot of work in planning, and we have a lot of confidence in the work that we're doing to plan for today and into the future. But you're right, we're growing at record paces. I have been with APS for over 30 years, and I have never seen the growth that we're experiencing today. And we have benefited for many, many years in the past where we have a surplus on our transmission system, meaning we have capacity to deliver electrons to customers as they sign up and connect to the grid. And we've had surplus within our generation portfolio where we have room to serve with our own assets, whether it's gas, coal, nuclear, or renewable, or we can buy it on the market. Where we sit today, it's a very different picture. We do have constraints on our transmission system. We have committed most of the resources in our portfolio. Therefore, we have to build and buy in order to meet the needs of our customers today, like the likes of TSMC that are continuing to ramp, Mayo Clinic in our territory who announced an expansion, and then new customers that are coming like Amcor and so many others. So it's not just today, it's into the future that we have to be planning for. And for APS, just a few stats for my company. From 2020 to 2028, we will bring on 10,000 megawatts of new generation capacity. And for perspective, the APS grid peaked this summer at 8,650 megawatts in terms of the usage of our customers. Our grids look about the same from an energy perspective. So we're adding 10,000 megawatts. We have another plan for another 7,000 or so megawatts out to 2038. That's part of our normal planning process. But what I think is important to note that the load that we're experiencing and the customers of these high demand customers like data centers, advanced manufacturing, they need base load generation. And that's a generating facility that operates 24/7 all day and has the capacity to produce the amounts of electrons they need and a reliable source of electrons. So in the Arizona market, there are 2 gas pipelines that come into the state. And those are also at capacity. And so what you heard from APS, or I think it was Q2, we announced this just a couple of months ago, APS, Salt River Project, Tucson Electric, City of Mesa, and some others announced that we are facilitating the development of a new natural gas pipeline into Arizona, which will unlock significant capacity to serve the load that we're seeing today and that we are anticipating will continue to come to Arizona, which is great news because we are anticipating that to be online in 2029. And what you're going to see is more announcements of developers building now gas plants to connect to that natural gas line. 2 weeks ago, we announced the development of a new natural gas plant that will come online right after this pipeline goes into place. And it's a 2,000 megawatt facility out in the Gila Bend area. And it's plants like that that will be needed to power data centers, that will be needed to power advanced manufacturing, at least and until we can get to 15 years or so down the road where we can bring on new nuclear generation. So baseload generation is our focus right now that helps us integrate the renewables that we've put on to the market within our system, and while we're bridging to the next generation for us, which is new nuclear.
Great. Thank you, Stacey. I was hoping you'd get into the natural gas line. LJ, tell us again, at the risk of boring everyone, I'm going to share a personal experience. During the pandemic, I had multiple experiences where I was at home. My grandchildren were there because they were excused from being in the public schools. They were doing homework online. My wife was in the other room doing her job online. I was trying to do my job online. And the bandwidth of, it was just totally inadequate. And I came to the conclusion that we all have maybe a constitutional right to have really crappy internet service in our houses. So I think that experience provoked in me this desire to find a way to get fiber optic to every business and home in our city. And the result, we went through a long study to figure out how to do that. It resulted in us working with companies like yours and others to tear up all of our streets and plow through people's begonias. But tell us, what is the role of telecom and fiber optic to, again, attracting these next-gen industries that is the subject of this entire conference?
Well, if you look historically at the needs of bandwidth, it grew relatively slowly for a long time, and we had dial-up modem service, and then we had megabit service, and then suddenly we got to gigabit service. I remember having conversations, and I've been with AT&T for 30 years, with people saying no one will ever need a gigabit into their home. And right now we're testing in our labs fiber-enabled 25 gigabit speed. That's how fast this has grown, and I think the pandemic did have a big piece of that. So it does require a tremendous amount of investment when we do this, but what we found is that people do like having that high-speed connection. They do rely on it. And I relate to Stacy's comments about long-term planning, and we do engage in that. The other aspect we have is that we're an intensely competitive business, whether it's on the fiber side or the wireless side. So we have to be ready to respond to that in a competitive way. And it requires a lot of investment. From 2020 to 2024 in Arizona, our CapEx was about $1.1 billion, so a significant amount of money we put into Arizona to be ready for that demand and to handle that capacity. But obviously, telecommunications networks don't stop at the state borders. It requires national investment. And in that same time period, from a national perspective, we invested $145 billion in network infrastructure on the wireless side and the fiber side and all the electronics that go with that. So it requires a significant amount of investment. And to get back to your point, there are two aspects of this that I've really heard today. One is being prepared for the technology boom that is going on here and the high capacity for water, power, and bandwidth that's going to be needed. But the other side of that I think is important is we spend a lot of our effort building fiber connections to residential customers, and hopefully the begonias that we tore up were not in your yard, but we do spend a lot of effort building out to residential customers, and I think that's important because when we talk about these big picture issues, data centers and chip manufacturing plants and other sophisticated high bandwidth usage, there needs to be a way for customers at home, residential users, to have a way to engage with and access that network in a way that makes it meaningful for them. So all the benefits that we're discussing about AI and manufacturing and everything that comes with that, it's about building connections both that will handle that capacity and also connect individuals so they can benefit from that.
So I was struck during Amy Lou's presentation about that we're in this pool of competitive 30 cities that are in the next tier right below Silicon Valley when it comes to competing for these types of jobs, these types of industries. And she talked about, and I apologize in advance, this was not on our pre-approved list of questions, okay? So everybody start sweating right now. Amy talked about affordability, right? And how bringing on these data centers, these advanced manufacturing centers that have high demands for electricity, high demands for water, is driving up the cost of water, electricity, and utilities. What's your response to that? How can we be competitive with these other regions that we want to go toe to toe with, and we want, as a Phoenix Metro to beat, but do it in a way that's not going to be cost prohibitive for the people that live here?
Want me to start?
Why don't you go first?
Yeah.
That way I can say I agree with Stacy.
Yeah, no, happy to. So just for a little perspective, and I'm sorry in advance if I'm sure I'm telling you all things you already know, but I would say for APS, just for a level set, 3 years ago, last month, October, our world's changed. One of my teams is the economic development team, and they came to me and said, oh my gosh, we have 4 large project initiation forms this week, and they were all data centers asking for hundreds and hundreds of megawatts, which we had never seen. That has not stopped. So for the last 3 years, our phones have been ringing off the hook. And sitting here today, we have a list, what we call our queue, and as does SRP and Tucson Electric Power, where our intake process now is you get on this queue, in line, basically. Today, my queue is 20,000 megawatts. My system's 8650, remember, as a peak. Now, we don't believe that 20,000 is real, but even if half of it's real, it's a lot. And we think we have a responsibility, or we should be part of the solution on how do we serve this important sector, because it's from a national perspective, state, and then from a consumer perspective, we've got to figure out a solution for data centers, but we certainly can't do it alone. But what we did is we stepped back and we said, we've got to identify how are we going to serve this sector while protecting our customers. And so we have 3 key pillars that we will not say yes, we won't commit to a data center or a large load customer that we're seeing if it risks reliability, puts reliability at risk, which we're a top quartile state for reliability, if it risks putting the dollars on the backs of our residential customers, we won't say yes. And importantly, if it crowds out the bread and butter economic development that you used to rely on as a mayor, and all of our mayors throughout the 11 counties that we serve in is relying on, that we're there to serve the bakery, the housing development, the big and small box economic development. Those are our three principles we will not sacrifice. But the underpinning of that is this concept of growth pays for growth. And in a case we just filed this year with our regulators to adjust our pricing, we are taking a very aggressive step in that case to say the growth that's coming onto our system, that we're going to have to go build incremental capacity on the transmission system and the generation system, they're going to have to pay for it. We cannot shift that to our residential customers. And you're seeing that happen across the country as utilities are looking for creative ways to adopt practices or principles to avoid rate shock, where rates are going up. We have been proud to be at the rate of inflation for many, many years. Things influence that, like inflation alone and supply chain, but we are very careful to protect our customers from this large amount of energy that we are getting in. And then just real quick, one way that we've just recently launched what we call our subscription model. And it's a model that allows us to accelerate some of these data center projects or large load projects. And it requires them to finance the full freight of the transmission and the generation capacity and sign a long-term deal with us. And if they can do that, we will go develop those assets for them. And right now we're in negotiations with a handful of customers or prospective customers for 1.2 gigawatts of demand that they will pay completely for. And so it's creative solutions like that, which we're going to have to come up with more, that we have to solve for as utilities so that we can protect our consumers while maintaining our responsibility on serving customers that want to connect to our grid. It's tricky, but we're focused. We do a lot of work in focusing on this area to make sure we're protecting customers.
Thank you. David, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I should say no, because it was such a terrific answer. I'll build on it. An example of protecting or preserving base load. We were in the process of extending a gas line in northern Arizona to serve 2 coal plants that we're going to convert them to natural gas in the process and then run them sort of like a peaker unit. So the net emissions is probably 90%. But the reason we did it is because of the affordability factor, the fact that we were able to preserve that much baseload generation at those 2 facilities without at a fraction of the cost of what it would be to build an entirely new facility.
Thank you. We're getting close to time for this. We could have an entire conference on this subject, and we probably should, but I wanted to spin off on one more thing that Amy Lou said in her presentation, that she pointed out that the great success that the city of Chicago has had with this P33 organization that brought quantum computing and has just been wildly successful. And I think she challenged us for the Metro Phoenix area, for PEI essentially, to follow that model and to become the P33 that would have a similar impact on our region. If I could get a closing comment from each of you, how can we respond to that call to action? What would be impactful in us helping you say yes to those types of projects as an academic community and business leaders and the folks that are assembled in this room? Why don't we start with David? I'm sorry, LJ, let's start and come in the spread direction.
Sure. Fiber is one of these things that takes a while to build and to plan. And in looking at how we project that out, the environment does matter. And I think that's an important issue. If we have a low cost to deploy and we have low barriers to entry, we can bring that fiber in And we will bring that fiber in, or someone else will do it. And I think the reason that's important is because if you have fiber when you need it for a large-scale project, or you need it for a coordinated program, something like PEI would host, you have a base to build on. If you're starting from scratch, it takes much, much longer to put that together. So any effort to coordinate and plan is welcome from our point of view, and any effort to build an environment that fosters fiber development is also helpful to us.
Thank you. Stacy, I should say APS and SRP are on the PEI board, so you're already participating, but what can the rest of the community do to elevate PEI to be that as impactful as a P33?
Yeah, I was struck by that slide on all of the stakeholders that were included in that, and I think it's probably worth having a conversation and getting the leaders around the table, because that's one thing we do have a great story here. We have great leaders in the business community, including PEI, as well as our elected officials at the local, county, and state level, and I'm confident there's work we could do together from a strategic standpoint, and collaborating on how do we come together to solve some of these challenges. The siding that has been referred to, I think, is absolutely one on our list. We've got over $6 billion of transmission investments planned between now and 2034. So this NIMBY discussion that we had, it's very real, and it's going to take collaboration and support for us to be able to build the infrastructure so we can prosper as a state, at least from an energy infrastructure perspective.
Thank you, David. Bring us home. Closing.
Well, it's funny, it was somewhat nostalgic to look at the velocity hasn't been thrown out for a long time. Necessarily, PEI sort of grew out of that Brookings vision. But it's interesting. I was in a Brookings meeting one time with GPAC, and the person from Brookings kicked off the meeting by saying, "I know you guys like to think that you're like Austin or Denver, but really you're more like Cleveland." And just borrowing from something that Representative Winiger said is, if you look at what's happened over the last decade in Arizona, it's remarkable in terms of the innovation that's taken place here and the amount of tech companies. And so whatever we're doing, I think there's a degree of which is working. But if you look at the investment that some of those other states are making, there's several more zeros than what we've been able to muster. And so I certainly don't want to reference it or in any way disrespect all of the effort that many of the people in the room have put forward. But I think it's going to be a continued resolve to try to build on what we've already done.
Thank you. Well, that's why we're here. Let's all make sure that we follow that great advice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, panelists. We appreciate that. Infrastructure is key. Before we get into our next panel on workforce, so if you are on the panel, be prepared. We have a short video for you.
right. Well, thank you very much. That was a great video from the Pipeline Connects team. I'm glad we got a chance to run that. I'm going to introduce myself briefly, and then I'll introduce our panel participants, and then we'll get right into some Q&A. So I know we're last in the lineup here, but I can promise you this is going to be really exciting because I've come up with a bunch of questions these folks haven't seen yet. So no, I'm just joking about that part. I first of all, thank you all for joining me, and I'll introduce everybody. But, you know, I want to say right up front, first of all, the folks that are on the stage here, along with Sarah Shambrook from Carvana, aren't just here for this panel. This is actually a working project team that's been addressing workforce issues now for a few months and has made a lot of progress on identifying both issues as well as solutions to solve those problems. So to very much, this is like a project meeting for us. We'll talk about some of the things we're doing today. You know, it's a particularly challenging time for workforce. The half-life of a skill set is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. What's relevant today may be irrelevant in a very short period of time, which makes it tough when you've got, you know, growth and you've got accelerating change to meet that with your workforce. You know, we've got the post-COVID surge in demand. We've got return to workforce, return to workplace mandates that have occurred. You know, Valerie and her team, you've got to place talent in some pretty remote regions. It's not all just in a nice office in central Phoenix someplace. You know, the technology changes we've talked about today are driving a whole new set of skills that people need. And I talked to Mary last night on the governor's staff a little bit about the fact that not only, you know, if you talk to employers, they say, we need people with these skills. And at the same time, there's people whose skills are vulnerable to AI. So think about what this means, right? An aging population, accelerating demand, jobs that are unfilled, and a whole bunch of people who have skills that may be less relevant going forward. How do we solve this? And just like the infrastructure problem, we don't get to choose this assignment. We have to solve this problem. If we don't, someone else will, and our community will feel the effect of that. So this isn't like, well, should we do this or should we not? Should we add infrastructure? Should we not? Should we solve the work? No, we will. It's just a question of how effectively and how quickly we're going to do that. So it's a little sobering, but it's the reality. So I want to introduce the panel participants here. We've got folks representing industry, the education community. Everyone here is engaged in innovation work in our community that demands top talent. And they're the ones that are solving the problems today. So I'll start with Diana here. Diana Danforth is the Senior Director of Learning and Workforce Development for Honeywell. Thanks, Diana. Valerie Beach from Freeport McMoran, where she serves as the Manager of Talent Acquisition. And yes, mining is an innovation industry. You might be surprised. It is. It's pretty interesting. We have Grace O'Sullivan from Arizona State University, where she serves as the Vice President of Corporate and Economic Development, and also the quarterback of our talent supply team, Pipeline, so thank you. And Catherine Adams from Pipeline AZ, Pipeline Connects, in the video we just saw. So I'm going to get right into it. I'll start with you, Diana. You're here at first base. So Honeywell participates in a pretty wide range of technologies and development and support of those in their products and services, and you know, all kinds of different things. And the development of these technologies and the rapid change in the technologies creates some pretty significant challenges for talent. It likely also places you in competition for the same talent with even some non-aerospace companies. So talk a bit about the challenges you're facing in hiring, talent development as well as hiring, and how technology advancements are affecting those problems, those challenges.
Thanks, Mike. As you mentioned, our competition has changed quite a bit, whereas traditionally our main competition maybe was other aerospace and defense companies. Now with the advancement of technology, we're really competing with the semiconductor industry, with automotive, with other IT-focused companies, and it's not a market we played as heavily in before, being a heavily manufacturing company in the past. So it's a new skill set that we're trying to attain. It's a skill set that we have a gap in within our industry quite significantly. And so not only are we looking at upskilling our current workforce, at the same time bringing in the skill set externally as well. We see a big skills mismatch. So with a lot of the automation that has happened, a lot of the individuals that we're looking to hire don't have the skills necessary to bring in. As Todd mentioned earlier, we're trying to kind of look ahead at what future work will look like. And as many of us, what was the stats? In 2030, a huge percentage of the skill set currently will be obsolete. And so it's very hard to kind of plan for that future. And so you go back to focusing a lot more on soft skills, whereas we focused on hard skills for a long time. So, innovation and really that thought leadership that we really need to get, we're not seeing a lot of as much as we'd like to see. And so I would say those are probably the biggest challenges that we're currently facing.
Do you think that we're in an environment where, just continually reinventing oneself and reskilling oneself is going to become more or less the norm?
Absolutely. The shelf life of a skill set is much shorter than it ever has been before. And so it is absolutely critical to have that mindset that you're constantly going to kind of reskill every 5 years or so.
Yeah, so it's not enough just to match applicants with jobs now. We have to be thinking about, congratulations, you're hired. Now let's get you trained for your next job.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that's a world that we live in. I agree with you. And it's, it's going to require a commitment of resources as well as some of the systems. I know Grace will talk a little bit about some of the great work that ASU is doing in that space. Valerie, I'll go to you. I think, mining and minerals refining is, I think you're on, is a technology industry. It is an innovation industry. The work you guys do, for example, with autonomous mining vehicles and refining technology and environmental protection and all of that requires an application of technology that I don't think folks may fully appreciate. And your mines are not in Central Phoenix. They're in
Right.
different places. So talk a bit about some of the unique challenges you face beyond just, we've got jobs to fill. Some of the things you have to deal with
Okay.
and how you're overcoming them.
Well, like so many others, other organizations within our industry and outside, we face a limited talent pool when it comes to the skilled trade folks, to those positions and those people that fill them. And this compounded by the fact that, as you mentioned, our sites are remote. Remote meaning they're literally 3 hours away from a metro city, and so that accessibility that somebody might have isn't there for them. So they're remote, and then a lot of the work that needs to be done is hands-on, so it can't be conducted remotely. To help us on the skilled trade side, and to attract new candidates that are coming out of the trade schools, because there's quite a few now, because there's been an uptake, as we all know, in the focus on skilled trades. We've launched a skilled trades paid internship program, which complements our existing apprentice program that we used to just focus in on for our internal employees progression. Now we have it available to external. So inviting those folks who've gotten some of the education and that training from the skilled trade schools to come in and then further themselves on a journey with us. You speak about innovation, and you were speaking about change, Diane, and the skill set, having to reset every 5 years. The traditional roles and the skill sets that have been held by our individuals that are in haul truck operator positions our diesel technicians, for example, it's not enough anymore, right? Innovation demands have changed. It really requires to have a mix of a skill set that a lot of these individuals don't have, or maybe haven't even considered for themselves in their future. And that, of course, is that digital and technical expertise component that relates to the automated systems and autonomous trucks that you mentioned, and I'll touch on that, but also just the data literacy and in terms of making informed decisions and being aligned with some of the emerging autonomous technologies as well. And so along those lines, for those of you who stop by the table, we have completed our launch of 33 trucks at our Baghdad location. For those of you that don't know where Baghdad is, it's, you pass it every time you go to Las Vegas. It's not Baghdad, Iraq, because I had somebody ask me that today, actually. And it's been, I think it's quite a success for us in an industry that has such a stereotype of individuals with pickaxes and lanterns and just dirt, right? But we had a goal, not only the autonomous project itself, right, to automate our trucks, but to ensure that our employees that were haul truck operators were not impacted. And so it was a zero loss of employment was the goal. And if anyone, which very minimal, I believe we had very few, and I mean under a dozen, I think, that didn't elect to move forward, it was because they were at a point where they didn't want to, they were in transition, either retirement or they just wanted to stay up in the area there in Baghdad. But the majority of the workforce, over 200 plus, it's fascinating, right? They were haul truck operators. Some of them have been operators for a really long time. And the next thing you know, they've decided that, I'm going to work in the control room. And they were trained to work in the control rooms that monitor these autonomous trucks. Or they're working on the trucks themselves on the maintenance side. Or they've discovered career paths that they might not have thought of for themselves in other department areas there at site, or they just decided that I want to be a haul truck, operator, it's okay, and I'm going to just move to another site location, and they relocated, and the company assisted with that. So it's been really neat to see that evolve. And then the other part is we've also, along the same timeline, have centralized some of our key roles from the sites. We've taken the remote access monitoring team, as we call them. It's a shift that really of workers and a team that support the 24/7 operations that we do have using technology from Phoenix versus being at site in a control environment where these individuals from all the different sites are monitoring the multi-site equipment, right? And it allows them to support the operations, but be in an area that's not remote themselves. And so they have that accessibility to the city, and it allows them, for us in the future, for these roles, obviously, to engage externals outside of the organizations, right? Who'll be more amicable to come to a position that's in Phoenix versus being at a remote location. So that's been.
Yeah, I think you mentioned several things there that I thought were fascinating. And, one thing I would say also is the demand for copper is going to go up exponentially.
Right.
With things becoming more electric. Data centers need copper. Electric cars need copper. Electric aviation systems need copper.
Everything needs copper.
Everything needs copper. The only thing we won't be using copper for anymore is pennies, I guess. We can stop with that now. But I think copper went out of the pennies a long time ago. But, I think just to kind of echo what you said a little bit, Valerie, your focus on growing your own tradespeople to solve that problem, I think is a really great example of stuff we can share. And trades, I'm using that broadly. I don't just mean electrician and plumber. I mean like assembly technicians and people that work in aerospace and other industries. Also the reskilling program, you did two things. One was you mapped people from one job to another and helped them find a way to get there. But also, you found a way to make on-site difficult work, in a different place, to flip the script on the remote work thing a little bit, to make it easier to find people and to retain people. And I know you shared some of that with Sarah and other people. I think that, and I know you've done some great work with housing availability and some other stuff. So I think there's a great example here of opportunities to share in other industries, some of the work you've done. I'm going to shift gears here, go to Grace. Grace, I know you're right at the center of, ASU is right at the center of everything relative to education and workforce development. You play a central role in helping to create that talent pipeline and help companies that are on stage and in the audience do what they need to do, even the partnerships with K-12, et cetera. Talk a little bit about some of the more recent work that's underway to help address the talent pipeline and both new hires and this upskilling and reskilling challenge.
Sure, happy to. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the ASU Mix Center. We're so glad to have you here. And Amy, it's so wonderful to see you. The Velocity Report's kind of like our Bible. So we've been doing our homework over the past few years here in the greater Phoenix area in the sense that, we've doubled our engineering talent. So we have 33,000 engineers now at ASU. We've hired over 200 faculty members. So I really think of people as an infrastructure layer as well. And the mayor just said earlier on the panel, it's about supply and demand. And the working group that we've put together, this team right here, is really matching supply and demand. And I think that's what's really needed right now, is that closed loop feedback of what does industry need, how is the talent that we as the collective education community, shout out to Julie there from Maricopa Community Colleges. And so we're thinking about how do you close that loop? There's a gap. Sometimes we don't often know, so we need our industry partners to tell us, well, the people who are coming out are lacking these skills. How are we going to close that gap together? So I had to step out earlier because I was talking to TSMC and their recruiting team. And usually I'm pretty annoyed when I have to step out of a great conference to take a phone call, but this was like, okay, I'm living and breathing the workforce development team that we're working on closing the gap. So we're talking about new ways for skills assessment, better and wider talent development pipelines. So when we think about talent, we're not only thinking about college grads, we're thinking about technicians, associate's degrees, people coming out of trade schools or high school. And we're really thinking about that entire lifelong learning path, because if you're not already on a STEM path by grades 6 through 8, you're already kind of missed the boat, and how do you get back on that path? So we're really intentional about building these partnerships early on, and it's also about not only the students, but inspiring them to learn about these exciting careers. You can't be what you can't see, so it's really about educating not only the future learners, but also their families. So if your family, if you're the first in your family to ever go to college or know about these jobs, you don't know what's all that's out there that's possible. So our colleagues at AZPBS is doing a great series about, a day in the life of a blank. So I think all of that is really a whole of the village effort that we all have to talk about what are the opportunities there. And it, like you're saying, Diana, it's about the lifelong learning and upskilling. How do you continuously retool and upskill yourself all along the way? So we're really excited to be along the journey and a really willing partner with everyone. And I'm so glad our working project team, supported by Kimberly Haynes at ASU, wave Kimberly, yeah, Kimberly does a lot of the hard work. So we're really thinking about that supply and demand chart. How do we close the loop? And so we're very excited to embark on this work. And it's not just a one and done type of project. These are relationships that we're building and sharing best practices. So really happy to be here.
Yeah, I like what you said. And I think, one thing I just echo is this idea of partnerships. You remember, I know you guys remember this, when we kicked off the pipeline project, I kind of implored upon the industry team members. I said, you get to share your challenges, but then you get to pick up a shovel because there's no cavalry, I think was the words I used. And there was some kind of glum looks, like, folks sort of thinking, so I'm just going to sit back and let ASU and the CTE programs feed my demand. I say, no, you have to be involved in this. Not just in defining the requirements, but actually helping to solve the problems. Being mentors, developing internships, developing apprenticeships, helping to run projects, donating equipment, right? Doing the parent and other stakeholder education. And I saw this firsthand, a Honeywell project with Mesa Public Schools. They went in and did that. They said, your child can be an engineer or a computer sciences professional or an applied mathematician. And here's the roadmap to do that. And it was an eye-opener because culturally a lot of folks thought, oh, my child can't do that. Or they wanted them to, but they didn't know how and who to talk to. Who can I call to ask questions about what math classes I should take or what clubs I should join? And the industry is the stakeholder in that. They have to be involved. Not overriding what the education community can do, but helping the education community do the work. And I think when that happens, and like you said, this is not a one-loop project. We're going to do this, and then we're going to define more roles and more challenges, and we're going to do it again and again and again. And I think the group that we have will grow as we become successful and do that. So you said it really well. All right, Catherine. You're next. Talk a little bit, Pipeline AZ. You guys play a central role in the talent equation. You are literally the pipeline. You're the connector. You've created an ecosystem that connects employers and training and talent in a closed loop way, because I know you measure the effectiveness of what you do as well. And your team provides a lot of feedback to employers and talent to help each group increase their success in the environment. So talk a bit about what you guys do. Specifically, what you're seeing in the marketplace today. What's the state of early career talent readiness and challenges they face?
Thank you for having me today and allowing me to share a little bit about the work that we do, and really it's with every single group in this room. And back to the Brookings report, we were also born and incubated out of PEI and the need for a talent infrastructure. And so if you think about technology being the way that students, learners, and earners, people that are reskilling, can go to one centralized space in order to find information about careers. It's kind of your air traffic control, your WebMD of careers. You can make up your own analogy here. But there wasn't a space where we could start with what was in demand. So that was critically important as we started to build this out for not only the metro region, but for the state of Arizona. So where we are right now in the state of the marketplace is we are not going to have any more people being born. This year in the United States, we had the largest graduating class we ever had, 3.9 million people. So from 2025 on, it's going to go on a steady decline, which is a daunting thing to think about. So I'm going to do some more wah-wah. But it's the reality. And so all of us know this because we're digging into this and we understand the criticalness of it. So when you talk about early awareness about careers, Grace touched on it, it's important that students early on, as they are those learners, that they are impacted with inspiration, that what I'm interested in is actually viable. And they're not just thinking about what I can do, but what I can contribute and what I can learn. And so when we talk about continuous learning, it really starts early. And the importance of that, I'm going to give you some more numbers. There's a report that came out from Pearson Education. It's called Lost in Translation. And we see over time that there are critical transition points where you could make a decision from middle school to high school, from high school to post-secondary, and onward. And so at these moments is when you need that inspiration and support. And that's what we're wrapping around. To each and every person that comes into the platform and into the system, it's really about helping you find that next step. Early awareness is also critically important because there is no way for us to see what the skills of the future are going to be necessary. So what students need to learn is career-connected learning, having agency, what my credentials look like, what I can do, what my skill set is going to continue to be so critically important. So that's a lot of what we're teaching early on. We partner with many different organizations. In fact, there's about 30 of them that we've formed this coalition in order to just share best practices and be supportive tissue to both employers and to schools. Because that is really where we're trying to connect the messaging. Again, what is in demand? What do jobs of the future look like? And how do we help people early on really see that? There's a lot of organizations like American Student Assistance that's really thinking about early awareness. And that's all that they focus on. Because middle school students are choosing a path right then and there. So do I want to study something like CTE? It's in middle school, you need to make that call. All you need to do is have an interest and try it on. It's amazing when we have the opportunity to be in a classroom with middle school students and we put the platform in front of them and we have the day in the life videos, courtesy of PBS, inside of the platform. And they're able to actually look and understand, that looks like something that I'm interested in. Let me look more into this. We have relevant data in there to help them understand what would a salary look like if I actually pursued this career. There's a lot of missed opportunities that we will continue to forego if we don't put a critical emphasis on early awareness. Helios and Ed4 do a lot of research in this area, and it's critically important for students to think about their future, but also finding a pathway where they can be economically successful for their family. So it will continue to be something that I think our collective group will focus on.
Yeah, I like what you said at the end there about economically viable. You don't have to have, they used to say, what do you want to do when you grow up, or what do you want to do next? Mm-hmm. Just think about next. Mm-hmm. And then we'll think about next after that, right? Because nobody's going to go into a career for the rest of their life anymore. And it's easier to see 5 years out than it is to see 25 years out. And, things are going to change anyway, right? So I think it's a really good point. And so I'm going to, you made another comment I thought was really great, which is around flexibility. The one thing that isn't ever changing is the need to be flexible. Mm-hmm. Change is the constant, right? And this is a headset thing, right? Education is part of it, but preparing yourself to, the Navy SEALs, and be comfortable being uncomfortable. You've got to get used to the idea that things will evolve and you have to adapt. Teaching adaptability and flexibility is a big part of what you guys do, I think. And so I'm going to circle back through you guys. We have about 8 minutes, so you have a minute or so each, 2 minutes each. Talk about what you'd like to see more of from this audience, from industry members, partnerships. What help would you like to see, whether it's the corporate side or the education community side? What would you ask for more of? I'll start with you, Catherine.
Okay. I would just say that we have an amazing community here in Arizona. I heard this recently, so I'm going to repeat it, so I thought it was really good. We are nice, Arizona nice. We love to collaborate, and we all get in a room, we're like, yeah, let's do this. And then when it comes down to it, it's like, wait, what's the next? Well, actually, I have to go over here. And so I would like that to be what we're able to accomplish together is so much further. And for a future and innovative economy, what we started to set out to do, we have to create a systems change. And that takes a lot of different levers to be considerate of. But foundationally speaking, we have so many amazing things in place. It's building upon that, changing the thinking. I would say from employers, I work really closely with both sides. But from employers, what I would love to see more of is the ability to think about a skills-forward approach to hiring as a pervasive strategy. So that means from your talent from within, as well as from your recruiting strategies. So maybe unbundling a job description that says, I need a bachelor's degree in 7 to 10 years. And instead, it says, I need these particular skills. Because as AI comes into the picture, and we still don't know what that looks like, it's going to be more and more important for us to hear from employers, for everyone in the system to really understand It really takes that nod from an employer to say, these are the skills that I need right now. And as AI takes on maybe some entry level or some components that are more, short-term roles, that's great. That just means humans still need to be a part of the equation. We still need to be thinking and strategizing and connecting some of those critical components. So I think it's important, and I'm going to say impactful, for our employers to really step up in this space and help us understand what some of those critical skills are. And sometimes it's not even going to be by a functional role. I know, that's crazy. Because when you want to hire someone for marketing, you think they just need these marketing skills, but it's not true. You heard it here, like skills are translatable. Jobs are adjacent. Not everything is super unique. We've made it very complicated. So it's really trying to strategize this system in a way where we can continue to grow it effectively.
All right, that's great. Grace, what's your one ask?
Yeah, I echo what Catherine just said. So I just think more engagement. Give us your feedback. Tell us what's working, and be really honest with us when it's not working. We love that feedback. That's how we improve. But I'd just like to take a little survey. How many people here have a college degree? You can raise your hand. Okay, almost everyone. So I heard this the other day, and it was such an eye-opener for me that, we are very fortunate sitting in this room talking about these topics that we're talking about, innovation. But somebody said to me, if your family hasn't gone to college and you say you can come work with us and you can earn a 6-figure salary or $80,000, like sometimes that doesn't compute to a lot of people. I think the way we communicate with people we want to bring into our industries and into our innovation ecosystem, sometimes you need to say, this is a $15 an hour job. This is a $30 an hour job. So really thinking through the way information lands with people is something I think we can all do better and not take for granted that they're coming from the world that we come from. So I just think that that's something we can all do better as a community, and we already collaborate so well, like Catherine said, so more of it.
Yeah, meet people where they're at, right?
Yes.
Valerie, what's your one ask or thing you think we should do more of?
Just one?
Yeah, because we've only got 4 minutes.
I'm just, to piggyback off of what Catherine said and Grace as well. So real quick, Freeport has really been elevating its talent acquisition to go from transactional to more strategic. And along those lines, leveraging AI to really help us with our shift, coincidentally enough, of becoming a more skill-based organization versus just the traditional requirements, right? So I would say from an employer standpoint, as we go through this shift to a skill-based organization, I would say we would be looking for the educators to help guide us to be effective in our outreach and our engagement with those individuals in the workforce, and help us to identify those areas of what's the word I'm looking for?
Be able to translate,
to translate.
Yeah, translate what you need into
so
what they
can
can supply. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, I think it's right on. Anything else, Valerie?
No, that's. I'm sure that there's more.
There's a lot to what she said.
Yeah.
It's a big ask, but it's critical, right? So
These are agenda items for our next meeting.
yeah, they
by the
are.
way.
That's right. Diana.
One of the things that we focused on at Honeywell Aerospace is something that you alluded to earlier, is building those relationships with the K through 12 really early on. Investing in STEM outreach. We've built partnerships with sports teams to kind of do STEM outreach, but really have been focusing on that K through 12 space with doing career exploration, mentoring, educating the parents, and so on. And one of the things that we continue to struggle with is the perception of the skilled trades. And so it's much easier to convince parents that your kids should go into the STEM, into engineering, into IT, and so on, than it is to go into the skilled trades. And helping us kind of change that narrative, I think, is really critical. We've started investing in talent not only from kind of those partnerships and mentoring, but also internships. We've started a high school internship program, and engineering and IT is more of an exploration, kind of getting them ready for a 4-year degree. But then in skilled trades, we're bringing them in straight out of high school, out of CTE programs, and converting them to full-time employees upon graduation. But it's really hard to get parents to really support that, and so helping us with that dialogue as well.
Yeah, I would echo that too. I saw that when I was there. There's a stigma, and I think that's unfortunate. I don't know if the SRP folks are still here, but they do a great job of this, and that's a group we should tap into relative to apprenticeships, and creating a pathway. And you and I both have examples from Honeywell of people who started in that path and went back and got company-paid degree, and are vice presidents now in some cases. So it's not your last job, it's your next job, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And it takes some of the pressure off, right? I don't have to get it right, I just have to get it right this one decision. So, well, I think we're almost out of time, but I would like to say thank you once more to all the panelists, not only for being here today, but for the great work you're doing. And Kimberly, thank you for yours as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, panelists. One last final thing before we have a nice reception outside. I checked. It's about a cool 80 degrees with a little cloud. Give me 1 second, Chris. You're jumping the gun, man. I have to say some nice things about you. And finally, Chris Harris, Senior Vice President, Empire Southwest. Chris is the EVP of Empire Southwest, which is the capital dealer for Arizona, Southeast California, and one of the largest private companies in Arizona. He currently serves as the Vice Chair for PEI. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for over 11 years through his interaction with GPEC. Like many of our speakers before, busy person, could do a whole lot. Instead, he wants to improve his community, the state, and he's always giving his leadership. And we greatly appreciate him. So Chris, concluding remarks and call to action to you, sir.
Thanks, Tim. We appreciate Tim being our stylish and fun MC today. It's great to have him here. Before I even start, I want to make sure we thank Wes Gullett, and I'm sure Kathleen is somewhere out here, probably working in a corner. Yeah. Where's Kathleen? There she is, over there. So both of them helped to conceive of this event, and even in the face of all the board saying, wait, I think this was like in July or August. You want to do what by when? And they pulled it off, and it's been a really great day. So thank you for all your work and efforts. So as Tim said, I'm Chris Harris, and it's my pleasure to try to conclude this meeting today and wrap it up. And I know that I'm all that stands between you and drinks and the weekend, so I'll try to be quick about it. But on behalf of, I'm a lifelong Mesa resident, so I'm with the mayor. On behalf of Mesa, welcome to Mesa, and also on behalf of the 4,000 team members of Empire, we're a sponsor today, welcome you to, this is our headquarters, is here in Mesa as well, but we have team members spread out all over the Southwest. And you may be thinking to yourself, why is the tractor guy up here talking about innovation? And so it just, one of the things that's fun, I love seeing Freeport's demonstration downstairs of their autonomy truck project. Freeport happens to be Empire's largest client, and there are many, many decades of partnership there, and including on that autonomy project. And if you think seeing a Waymo go down the road is interesting, you got to go see a 793 Caterpillar mining truck going down the road with nobody in it. It's quite a sight. And so we are very much involved in technology and how industries are changing. And really with our role at Empire, nothing happens in the physical world without us helping our clients to make that happen. And so whether it's in the construction business or the mining business or data centers and hospitals and the backup power that's provided there, the agricultural business, it's really exciting to be one of those companies who's kind of in the background but helping to move things forward. And so our interest and my interest as a lifelong Arizona resident has always been, how do we help move this state forward? And we're such a new state in so many ways, and how do we continue to get better? And as in my career, I've been lucky enough to see, I came out of school in the late 80s when actually there'd been this big run up and excitement in the real estate industry, and then there was this famous bust. And I came out of school right when Forbes released an article that was titled something like Desert Boomtown Goes Bust. And it chronicled all the reasons why we were way too reliant on tourism and real estate and how it was never going to work here. Out of some of those tragedies and hard times and tough times come people who come together and think, how can we do this differently? And GPEC was one of the things that came out of that time frame, is how can we get economic development to be a strong suit? How can we get a public-private partnership, cities and towns and companies working together? And that GPEC is a jewel of Arizona now after 30 plus years. And we had a really good run for about 20 years, and then the Great Recession comes along. And again, we could tell that we had done well collectively to build out a more diversified economy, and Mary spoke to the benefits of that this morning. But there was still work to do, obviously, and a whole bunch of leaders got together to continue to push additional strategies to do that, both from our political leaders and their investment in ACA and other things, folks involved in GPEC who rallied together to stand up the Brookings Institute, and Amy coming out and eventually helping us with the Velocity Project. And it was really exciting to see, and throughout my career, to see the benefits and payback over time of intentional acts and intentional investments. And to be able to serve on that Velocity team was a real privilege. And I remember back, seeing the leaders of APS and SRP being involved and spending their time there. There were some of the banks and a lot of political leaders involved, but the one that stands out the most is Dr. Crow from ASU. He was on the team and came to most of the meetings. And this guy, I don't know if you've never had the privilege of being close to him, I don't know how he gets everything done. And we would be in these, and the Velocity Project was a year and a half project over time. He would come to these meetings and he would synthesize and take things in such an amazing way. And he would always kind of crystallize it on his way out with some wrap-up comment. And by the time he'd come back to the next meeting, he didn't wait for us to wrap this up and make it look pretty and tie a bow on it. He'd be like, oh yeah, I already raised $10 million to add to the engineering school, and we already hired 20 new professors. And every time he came back, he was like building his own momentum. By the time we got to the end and actually published the Velocity report, he already had the engineering school, kind of that leg of the stool that came out of it, up and going and moving and having momentum. And so it was very inspiring to be with leaders who just put their time and money where their mouth was and where they saw the need for the investment. And so it's just a real reminder to all of us in our influence and in our networks that we have the ability to make an impact and make change. I even remember back being involved a long time ago, after the early part of my career, I was on the City of Mesa Planning and Zoning Board, and then was asked to help to do the update of the general plan. And Southeast Mesa hadn't really been developed yet, and we just got kind of control of the airport out there at Williams Gateway. And part of the general plan, and our consultants are telling us, you got to leave room. Don't just do houses everywhere. You got to leave room for eventual manufacturing and technology and all these future businesses. And now you drive that corridor where the airport is, and there's data centers and there's advanced manufacturing, and you can see the payback over time. So I just encourage all of us to keep those things in mind as we and thank goodness to people like you who are here late on a Friday on a beautiful day, spending your time to try to help make our local community better. And we need you to invest and connect and amplify these messages. So, if we can get you to leverage your networks and you're clearly investing your time and your resources, get others to do the same thing. Help mentor people who are the next generation who can come up and pay back, and then amplify this message. And that's been, we've been involved now with PEI for 10, 12 years. And there are times along the way, it's like, are we making any progress? And then you kind of wrap up some of these things like today, and it's really exciting to see that there is progress being made. One of my favorite quotes that gets me through some tough situations, and it's usually attributed to Bill Gates, is we tend to overestimate what we can get done in a year, but dramatically underestimate what we can get done in 10 years. And so if we stay at this mission, we continue to help diversify our economy, we take into account the things that Amy shared with us today about the next steps and how to make sure we're including people in this progress. And that may be one of our solutions to the NIMBYism problem too, is if we can get more inclusion, I think we help solve part of that. And so just wanted to share these thoughts, really thank everybody for being here, thank all those who helped play a role in today, our sponsors to help put this on, and thank you for your support, and have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you all for attending. If you want to head downstairs, like when you were going to get your lunch, that little patio area out there, reception, I heard there might be some beer, might be a rumor, but you might want to head down. Please pick up your trash. Let's be good stewards. And everybody head downstairs and let's network and have a nice reception.